All right, guys, welcome back for another podcast. Today we have Doctors Christina and Lauren, so here we go. You know, whereas you guys, It was like the entire summer, which, what a summer.
Yeah.
Yeah, what a summer.
We were literally just talking about how we don't remember anything that actually happened.
And it seems like forever ago.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, yeah, that actually, I think, is all kind of the topic of conversation because, like, because you guys really... which still blows my mind because to me it just seems like yesterday. But you guys were again the first class of the house mentorship system, like at Michigan State,
right?
You know, or at least when we were still trying to get that going and whatever it was going to be defined as then to how it's being defined now. But yeah, I think it's just I think it's wonderful that you guys have come here and are working full time and that kind of stuff. But I just really want to pick your brain on all of that. Because there's so much perspective that you guys have that you may not know that you have, but you absolutely have.
Yeah.
Like as veterinary students to then first grads, and then now coming into, again, almost a year out, where now you're going to have other younger veterinarians around, Brianna, who's like, and now you guys are the seasoned veterans, you know?
Oh. Sorry to everybody.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, it's like just picking your brain on that, you know, in a recorded way, is, just going from that transition, because for us, I know the growth that we've had as a business, you know, back 5 years ago, you know, when we were just starting to be like, we have to, you know, integrate with students, you know, mentorship, all these things. A lot of it was ideas then. And we knew that we had time to kind of develop these little things as we went through the years, because we knew it wasn't realistic that you're going to start a program and it's successful year one. Right. But I guess, coming into now, you guys both having ridiculously successful procedures in the last month, like that's for me, that's full circle. Like that's the end of it. Like you're doing it. So, which is, something to be incredibly proud of. But so take me, I guess, through that experience as far as, you know, what we kind of talked about, if you can remember back in school, to then the hesitation, or even just not hesitation, but maybe just concern as new graduates kind of coming into a new profession, I guess, or new industry or new job, and then where you are at now. Because I think it's substantial difference.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So, we were just talking about this again today, how we all got started just with PAW. We met you during our first year of that school. First year, not knowing anything, what we wanted to do, no idea. You came for a talk. We were like, do we remember what the talk was about? No.
Do you remember what the talk was about?
It was my first iteration of the industry overview. So the industry overview was in circles. We
thought it was industry related, because we're like, wow, this is awesome. Yeah. He's so passionate.
Whatever you said, it just clicked. It's that's what we're looking for out of a practice.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you were talking about externships for third and fourth years, and we were in our first year.
Yeah.
And I think we both just had these thoughts separately, and then had come together we were hanging out later, and it just came up in conversation, and we're like,
let's reach out. Let's see
what happens.
Yeah.
Maybe he'll let us come up and shadow for a week. I don't know. I'm not normally that direct about things, so I definitely think it helped that it was kind of both of us having that thought. We were able to kind of push each other to do something that I don't know we would have necessarily done, especially going to none of us are from Wisconsin.
Yeah, it was a completely different place.
Same.
Everything was different. Exactly.
Yeah. I don't know what you guys are talking about. This place is great. I've been here my whole life.
I love it.
Right.
Yeah. No, it fits. The shoe fits. I'm good.
It does.
Yeah,
right.
I'm good.
You would have never known. Right,
yeah. No, you would have never known. Yeah. So so on that one point, so just saying it just sort of clicked. Even then, what do you remember? it's a long time ago.
Right. But I know. It's just it was just the feeling.
I know. That's all I can think.
I said, you whatever you were saying was just aligned with, I think, our idea of practice.
Yeah.
In that we'd want to be a part of, just the community of
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the change that we were seeing in the industry that you were seeing too, that a lot of people weren't.
Yeah.
Having worked at other practices that were just kind of stagnant, or they've always been that way. Like personally, I had worked at a few of those, and I was just like, wow, like this guy like sees change, and that's awesome. And I didn't even know that was a thing that could be happening, but this seems like what I want to be a part of. So yeah, that's what I was kind of curious about. 'Cause I mean, honestly, there's always going to be a way in which you can connect with someone, you know, and I've often been told that like, I have a way, just the way in which I talk, I motivate people. And to me, it's like, okay, that's kind of a cool, like, superpower to have. But like, you know, but it's like, kind of like, why? Like, what is that, you know, what is that connection? And that was kind of my curiosity, is how many sort of like other experiences did you have to sort of be the, you know, like litmus test, you know, like, well, this is what it was before. He's at least kind of talking this way. And I mean, just on that sort of like backstory, because I mean, I'm just trying to think how long ago I would have had other experiences at other clinics by the time I had gotten up to vet school. But was it like really robust? Like, did you guys have like kind of like a diverse experience, you know, like a couple different clinics or shelters, or did you kind of have... Yeah, I guess I wouldn't say mine is too robust, but I did a lot of different things. So I was at like a couple different hospitals in different roles. Like I was kennel staff, or I was receptionist. I also did like time at Petco, or like at a horse shelter. I don't know. So it was a little diverse.
Just got it around.
But yeah. So that was me. But.
Yeah. For me, I mean, yeah, I did shelter stuff. I did an internship there. And then most of my stuff was like a surgical stuff in Chicago, which I think was more kind of what we talk about, like the 1% of kind of clientele.
Yes.
So I had a little bit of that perspective. So I think a bit too, kind of what you were saying, was more like trying to hit that middle 60. And I was like, that's... Right.
That's one of those, people, that idea, I think, is one that, just because you and I have said the words middle 60 for 5 years, and you've said it for 10 years before that, like, I think we're to the point that we just take it for granted, because it's just who shows up, and it's who it works best with. But like, I mean, does that really? I mean, I know that it doesn't really exist in that way outside of this setting, but how is that kind of translated with you guys? Is that something that's like solidified, or are we kind of full of hot air?
Oh
no, I would say it's pretty accurate. I mean, you can't really judge anyone who walks through the door.
Right.
Like, you can kind of like look on there and be like, oh, they mark cash, but then they're like, yeah, I'll foot like a $2,000 bill. Like, you know, like,
I brought the cash.
Right. But it's just trying to, I think, be not judgmental of anyone who comes in, and it's like, here's potential things we can do, and if you have a limit, like, what can we do?
Right.
In that.
Tell us up front. Let us know.
How is that translated to the medicine portion, though? Like, do you guys find that that's like inhibiting at all? Because, like, you know, especially if you worked in a 1% setting, and honestly, like, having worked in a university setting, we can all acknowledge that's a 1% setting.
Right.
I mean, I know that the first 3 months was just figuring out how to use the right words with people. Right. Was that a big part of it? Kind of how have you integrated the reality of, you know, inhibiting factors, financial, bond spectrum, that sort of stuff into your medicine?
Yeah. I mean, it definitely is challenging at times, especially like the money portion too. But I don't know, I like that, and I like the challenge. I mean, every case is different. Exactly. It's like, well, this is what I'd want to do gold standard. Like, this is what I think should be done. And it's like, well, we can't do that. Okay, then I need to rack my brain more, like trying to think more outside the box. Well, if it was this, like, what could I do? Or, okay, well, we just need to wait a while, come recheck. So, I mean, it has been challenging, but I think it's pushed me like better in that way. So
I think we've more had a lot of conversation, me and Carlo, about like just doing clinical medicine, which then I think when you kind of hit some of those financial limitations, you're just leaning more into that. It's just moving away of kind of the gold standard of diagnostic portions and just saying, all right, well, what is the animal exhibiting? What can I do treatment-wise to alleviate some of that, and use that as a diagnostic then too? Yeah, right.
Yeah, the success or failure of therapy as part of that. That test. How about like sort of like coming out of that university setting, and then with the expectation of coming into practice, and then sort of that 3-month onboarding to then that perspective both of you guys just shared, like, I like the challenge, and okay, the clinical medicine, and, you know, that type of perspective. How do you think coming out of university you were prepared, and then coming out of the 3 months of onboarding that we gave you, or that we did together, not that we gave you, we did it together.
Right.
Is how do you think the steps of preparation did? Because that's one of the things that we've kind of been addressing a little bit with our like veterinary student audience is kind of this idea between like book smarts and street smarts.
Right.
You know, is just like, all right, university, you're going to cram all this stuff in, but as far as the preparation of what we call day one ready, you know, is saying in that preparation, how do you guys think coming out of school into practice to then coming out of the 3 months? Like, I guess that growth in yourselves, have you changed your perspective on how to perform medicine, you know, into that middle 60%? Or do you feel like that was something that you were equipped with coming into the job? Kind of how has that transition gone?
Okay.
Well, I mean, we were talking about day one ready is not a thing. It's just not a thing.
Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
a blatant lie if you take that as just like the statement.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that though? Why is day one ready?
We had, just so you know, we had 4 different definitions last week on day
right.
one ready.
I was gonna say you have to actually define it. Like,
Yeah.
if you're day one ready, yes, is kind of what you said. Like, you're just equipped with kind of where you should go to find that knowledge, or just kind of basically the attitude of continued learning.
Yeah.
Then yes, you're
quote
unquote day one ready.
Mindset.
But day
ready.
one ready, when you just think about that, it's like, I'm gonna come out and be a doctor and be on my own and know all the
surgeries,
things.
do everything.
Like, no.
Yeah, no. School, no. We just didn't get enough. I mean, it's hard. It's not like school's fault or anything, but we just didn't get enough of being a doctor at school. It was always, we were the students, so we were just kind of tagging along. And then when you're like, okay, now we're working and we're throwing us into, we're the doctor, we have to have all those hard conversations. We're put in the seat, we have to look at the blood work, make the decisions. Like, definitely, like, just no way to be prepared for that right out of school.
No.
Like, we just didn't have enough of it.
Yeah.
Because in school you have your safety net of like your residents and your clinicians, which you should. Yeah,
of course.
You
of
should.
course. Yeah. Need to.
Yeah. Need to.
Yes.
But yeah, I mean, it just depends then on where you're kind of at in your first job. Like, if you don't have kind of a transition then out of that safety net to like a mentorship to being on your own, it's definitely a lot more difficult. And I think you kind of touched on, I mean, the main thing is communication, which there's no way to really teach that in school until you just
You have to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate part about learning how to talk is the only way to learn how to talk is to talk.
Right.
And
just get the experience.
And the other thing too is, you know, considering some of the more behavioral variables that I know that we work with, like the industry itself attracts typically introverts. Which I think is really interesting. Right. There's one. We found one. Yeah. So like, not only is it hard to learn how to talk, but also I don't necessarily want to talk.
Right.
Like, I really like thinking. I really like the science of this, but now I have to use my voice and use my intelligence and translate these things to someone that has absolutely no freaking idea what I'm talking about into something that's actually a solution. Like, not only do you have to do that in a setting that is limited in resource, but also limited in intelligence, and like it was a fascinating thing to watch as a true outsider of like, I've literally never done any of this, and to see, especially those first couple weeks, it was really fun to watch you guys just come back and like just say the words back to yourselves.
Yes.
And it was like, I see learning happening, and it's literally out loud. It was pretty cool to see.
And I'll to kind of pitch tier 4 of our education system just a little bit, is I always kind of laugh at that idea of, you know, introverts, like, I don't like really want to talk. Like, the way in which you talk less is you move into teaching. Like, and it's not that you're necessarily talking less overall, because you're still talking, but the level of separation is, no, well, now I actually can pass on what I have and help those that come after me. That's both of those parts of tier 4, where it's individual advancement or industrial advancement, where it's just like, that's why I keep like pushing you guys into being like, hey, it's almost 1 year, like, you're almost the old guys on the block, like, we're almost there. And it's like, but that's actually what I'm like trying to push your brain into, is being like, no, you actually have the skill set, you have, you know, more than you are. I hope you are aware of all of it, but most likely it's that you need to be more aware of what you have to actually provide the team beyond what you're currently doing. because I think even tonight we talked about it. One of the other things we were doing is it's like there's certain things we just take for granted here.
Yeah.
You know, like we have such, well, not pure process and protocol. Like there's process and protocol we always try to grow. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. But we take for granted like our estimate process, you know, to like invoicing, to checkout, you know, to all these other fundamentals that we don't have to deal with. Yeah. And part of it is, yes, we need to have an efficient process. We need to have clarity. We need to make sure that people know expenses. We don't want to spend more money. Like I hate taking money away from like kids. I mean, I don't like that kind of thing in kind of these struggling households. But also I don't like having conversations about money. Mm-hmm. So it's like it just built a company where I was like, all right, let me just hire a bunch of people who will do it for me. Yeah. You know, so it's like, you know, but it's more efficient to do it that way. It's more efficient that we sell people more on the idea and the justification of why a treatment is necessary, why a diagnostic is necessary. And then, like you said, they mark cash on their form and they're just like, well, actually, I do have other ways that I can pay. Mm-hmm. You have really provided value in your guys' service. This is what I would like to do. So you're exactly right. A part of it's not judging the book by the cover, but again, I kind of make a joke about not wanting to talk more, you know, like, cause when I had started here, it was doctors did 100%. It was insane. Like we had to build our own estimates. We had to put our own charges in. We had to, you know, have the whole financial discussions. I mean, all of that stuff like MSS does, like we had to do, like Trevor and I actually, and Bruder a little bit, and Annie some. I think that's probably getting up to our last like group, you know, but it was like, that was a big part of our day. So like as doctors, we'd spend so much work on estimates and all these types of things, and like everyone would just be standing around, you know, they'd be like, okay, well, doc, did you get that estimate signed yet? Can we do this? You know, and I'm like, but I got 10 other patients I got to do. Like, can you guys just go get this signed for me? Yeah. You know, but yeah, as introverts, that's how we end up talking less in time, is we just farm out those things. Right. But more importantly, they are incredibly important roles. Like, and that's, I think, the other thing that I really try to pitch all the time is it's not chuck off work. It's like, no, this is actually super important. I want people who are better at it than me doing it.
Yes. Right. Yeah.
You know,
very grateful for that system.
Yes.
We have, just coming in, just trying to be a doctor and like know the medicine and talk to people about the medicine and not
and it also, I
money.
think, saves some of our time to just be like, all right, I'm going to stop this conversation now, go get you this estimate so I can go work on the next patient.
Exactly.
Right. It's more efficient.
Because otherwise, like, I don't know, like if people talk to the doctor, quote unquote, like they just ask other questions and do other things, and then you're doing a whole nother consult. And
Yep.
Right.
Yeah. So all efficiency and that's, I think, why, you know, we pitch fulfillment so much, you know, and really that toppled hierarchy, you know, and of course we talk about, you know, planning and all these different types of things. It's like if all of us in the entire organization is focused on educating caregiver and serving the patient, that our whole purpose is to, you know, reduce unnecessary conflict and improve process overall. Like, as long as we're all doing that, we just have different jobs, you know, and it's like once you topple that hierarchy and you actually get people hired in for that, you onboard them for that, and they're fulfilled doing it, that's freaking awesome. Mm-hmm. You know, like I'm just as excited that they're excited about their job as I'm excited about mine, you know, and that's that I think has been very fun for me over the last 5 years of ownership, is to see kind of the old ways transition out. And for me, it's like, cause I'm so like pictorial in my head, like I have already like seen those things. And now that they're actually like coming to be, I'm like, well, obviously that's the way it should have been, you know, like, duh.
That's how it was in my head.
Right. Yeah. That's how it was in my head. And like, it's just very like comfortable, but to see that actually happening, I think is something to be very proud of. Mm-hmm. But that's where it's, you know, bringing young professionals onto the team, where it's just like, hey, I don't remember what he said, but that actually kind of makes sense. I'm like, I don't remember what I said either.
But it definitely made sense.
Yeah, it worked and it definitely made sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess, you know, the coming out of kind of that summer. So, you know, the big thing we try to talk about is onboarding, and we do onboard everyone a little bit different. We kind of fluctuate that with time. Like CSS, we used to onboard for just a week, but now we're actually kicking them up to 2 weeks. And we're talking about MSS, where we're actually going to cross onboard, where one of the weeks they're going to cross onboard is CSS, 1 week is MSS. So there's different ways. We always kind of just grow and develop those things as they come. But really, honestly, Dr. Kenny was the first one that we had done a strong side-by-side onboarding with as a pure experiment. And like everyone laughs at me all the time because I just say that everyone's an experiment, but like it is, but it's strategic planning, and anyway,
it's science.
It's science. But anyway, so with then you two and then Rhiannon kind of coming on to then really experience. It's like, no, we have to do that. Let's really try to lean hard into it. What would you say, like from a growth curve standpoint, as far as what you had experienced in that 3 months to now be 6 months past that? I think probably roughly, something like that.
There.
Yeah, 6 months past that.
Yeah.
How do you think that set you up for the last 6 months, having that experience in the first 3 months versus the 4 years of college before that?
Right. So like we had said before, like day one ready, not really a thing. I think it was huge. I mean, in the moment, it was definitely difficult to appreciate, I guess. But looking back, like those 3 months was just huge. Like I think we both had like a good mindset going into it, which helped. I mean, that was like our day one ready, even though we didn't have like all the experience, but we did so much in those 3 months. I mean, even within our first week, it was like we're going in on consults ourselves. Like we just have to do it.
There was more of a plan, but then the summer happened. And then it just kind of was.
Yes.
We're gonna still be back there behind you, but just please go do.
But you
this
have to
thing.
do.
Right.
But that helped a lot. Absolutely.
So much, and just knowing, I mean, and like you and Katie were obviously the kind of setup mentors that we had, but I think it was also just coming into that the entire staff was on board for teaching and being patient and doing whatever all the other doctors, MSSs, CVTs,
exactly.
CSS,
I leaned on everyone a lot.
So much.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
I think that kind of leads to another thing we take for granted, though, in that toppled hierarchy, and like posing the scenario of, if you guys are in that first 3 months, imagine that you're in charge of all of those other roles.
Right.
Like the amount of stress that you can imagine that would have created just out of complete unnecessity, right?
Yeah.
Right.
As a means to gather power for no freaking reason.
Yeah, right. Just,
like I can't imagine a scenario where that actually exists.
Yeah.
Like you said, it kind of comes out of experience. Like day one ready can't exist because you don't have the experience to be day one ready.
Right.
But in these other clinic settings where there is this hierarchy, like you go from the dirt on the bottom of the shoe to the head honcho, like that's too big of a shift.
Right. Yeah.
Not
baby
reasonable.
Baby steps. And even just if like coming into like a bad environment, like not even just being the head honcho, but coming into a place where other people aren't treating you right, or like I couldn't even imagine. I think I take that for granted a lot too. Like we came into a really good environment where everyone was willing to help us and like really work as a team, which I couldn't imagine that not being the case. I wouldn't have survived.
No.
Well, no, I couldn't survive.
No, none of us could.
No,
Right. Not good.
No.
Like it would not be.
It's just already so stressful. Like you have long days, a lot of like emotional cases and things going on that like you don't need that from
unnecessary conflict.
Exactly. You don't need that.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, again, another thing that we take for granted, and it's true. Like, I mean, the unnecessary conflict component, I'm happy that it's no longer a significant portion of the story for us. It's still going to exist in some capacity.
Well, it's people.
It's just exactly. And I think whenever we do have that conflict, like we have a group of people that are at a point now where if we have to do case reviews, if we have to do after actions, if we have to do those type of like accountability tools and mechanisms, like it doesn't make it worse, I guess is one way of putting it, So actually, Lauren, I think you were on 2, weren't you? Were you on 2 after actions or just 1?
Just 1. But
okay.
Yes.
Yeah. For some reason I thought it was 2. So let's actually kind of like lean into that and saying, it made it so much easier not having poor culture. Let's talk about culture management. So because I don't think you've been through, I don't think you've even had any case reviews either. No, you've had case reviews. I just didn't tell you about them. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
so yeah.
Don't say that to her.
I know. That's why
Here
I said
comes
it.
the paranoia.
It's like the aorta jokes you make during surgery all over again.
God, I know. She's like, is it okay to tie it off? I'm like, don't worry, it's not next to the aorta. And it's
He's like, just make sure you don't poke the aorta. It's fine.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, not the time to make the joke. But actually, we talked about this in surgery the other day. Is that like I have to make those jokes to let my like energy out. Like I get too bound up if I don't. But then it's like a transference.
Put it on other people.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah, I let it out, and then Christina just takes 100% of it in. Like, holy shit! Listen, stupid. I know I'm not by the aorta, but why would he make that joke? I'm not by the aorta, but why is he making that joke?
Right.
Obviously, I got to be close to it. Am I supposed to have the stitch right now? And I'm just like,
Overanalyzing everything.
yeah. LOL.
Yeah.
You know, and it's
I'm
not
glad I
right.
could help you.
It's not right. Like, it's not appropriate thing to do to pass that on to someone else. But like, I need to get that out.
Right.
Like, it's got to come out. Anyway. Accountability tools, because it sounds like we may have just identified an HR issue. I hope Annie's not listening.
Yeah, Annie.
Right, hi Annie. Right, so then to say the after action. So I actually, as a positive note, we have another after action I want to do on that one case. But anyway, the after action that you had. So whenever we talk about after action, so we talk about accountability tools. After actions can be done when the results were desired or undesired, if it was a positive outcome or negative outcome. So the ones that you kind of been in on.
Yeah.
When the email goes out, after action, you guys have to be here on this date, available, Zoom, in person, whatever. Fill out this questionnaire.
Yep.
Time for after action.
Oh yeah.
Take me through that.
I was sweating.
Yeah. Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
yeah.
from when you get the email to then going through the after action to then coming out of it.
Yeah.
So your perspective before and your perspective after.
Yeah. So when I guess first got the email, I was like, oh, like I've heard of these, but I don't really know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know. I might have even texted Molly and been like, I'm being a part of one of these, and she was like, calm down,
Yeah.
it's fine, like you'll be fine, it's good.
Yeah.
And so so nervous. I think I was at the shelter that day, so I was like rushing home, like my laptop wasn't working, everything was a mess. I think I had to do it on my phone, like.
Yes.
But it was fine. But no, I actually really, I guess in a way, like enjoyed being a part of it because it was just it was nice to see it.
Yeah.
It definitely was a case that several things had happened, more like miscommunication. Obviously, nothing anyone's meaning to do, but that's affecting the case as a whole, and we need to be aware of it. And yeah, I mean, it was like 2-3 hours long, something like that, but a lot got accomplished. And yeah, doing like the questionnaire beforehand was really good. It helped me remember a lot of things and things that I was like, oh, I need to take responsibility for this, or I just wasn't aware of it. This is a question I need to ask, and it helped me learn a lot. And with my next cases, I think they're like awesome. I'm really happy that that's something that we do. So
yeah, you thank Ben for that. You know, I mean, yes.
Woo. You have no idea how arduous it was to be like, we should do this. As I'm sitting in an office on the other side of town, and I'm speaking with these guys once every other week at that. And they're like, we have all these problems, and I'm just like rooting around on my laptop, like, what can they do? What can they do to solve this problem? And then I ended up on the Marines website.
Oh.
And I was like, they should do this. This is it. And this was before I had read anything from Jocko.
Oh,
this was like this was just like, I need to find some sort of solution. And that one, so the after action, what came about long before the forgiveness model actually.
Oh yeah, forgiveness was further. Yeah.
Which I actually thought was kind of an interesting sequence of events because one thing that's you guys, you've been exposed to PAW Health for years, but it's been in those little short spurts, and now it's obviously full time. But one thing that's pretty interesting about it is there's so many things that when you look at the industry overview, there's so many problems that it's really, really easy, or has been, to be reactive to problems because there's just so many things that, like, so many issues to solve, so many things to do. And
you can never catch up.
The implementation of the after action was, well, we have a lack of accountability. Like, we don't really know what that is, but we know that we don't have it. So how do we just start to engage these conversations? And at least the first one that I was a part of as an employee was at the City House.
It was at Kenny, Molly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that one took like 4.5 hours.
Correct.
It was a long one. And everyone was in person, right? Pre-COVID.
Yeah.
We're all just sweating in the City House.
I think one of the girls was on opiates, like she was like after surgery, so she like fell asleep during the meeting. Yeah,
dude, I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, I definitely remember that.
Then she got fired a couple weeks later, not because of that.
Had nothing to do with that. Completely unrelated.
She just called her job a bullshit job.
She didn't value her job as CSS and called it a bullshit job, and I was like, you can't work here anymore.
She was fired within 2 hours of that statement.
Oh.
Yeah. Because again, like I value every position in our organization like to the nth degree. And it's like
no bullshit job.
No, there's so much work.
Right.
But anyway, so the after action.
So the cool part about that though is like just that generation of accountability, and you guys have fortunately not had to go through like the building process. So I'm actually glad that it worked the first time, because the first few times, especially in the smaller group settings, like you and I talked on the phone for hours after them. Of like, well, this didn't go right, and this didn't go right, and this didn't go right, and it generated a bunch of tools out of it, and then case reviews came around. And all of these things that kind of built up to what the ERT is, and now is shifting again. Not a ton, but definitely
completely
enough.
Redoing the whole sections 1 and 2.
Just that phrasing makes me want to die. But I'm glad that it kind of translated, because that was. Again, it's something that we kind of take for granted because of the fact that we spun that wheel so hard.
Well, and that's I think what we're trying to at least get the message out on is I think the veterinary professional is actually a very unique person, because we're heavily rooted in science, right? Mm-hmm. But none of us are in human science. Right. I mean, that's kind of a unique thing, right? So for me, again, we like I said, we trend more towards introverts and so on and so forth. But like honestly, there's a huge creative part of our job. A big part of it is creative, like abstract thought, like to be like, I mean, we really did learn all of those species. Like we really did. Like we took a national board exam on it, and like it happened. So to be able to kind of like extrapolate that thought of all these different body systems into multiple species. I mean, we can talk about how amazing veterinarians are. I mean, obviously we are, but like. So when you look at it from, sort of this kind of creative type thought, and say we're, creating the after action and we're creating all these different tools, there's this natural tendency for us as veterinarians to be like, all right, I'm going to take this process and I'm going to change it. And that's where for us, it's like, no, like really, like we figured it all out. Like we have the answer, like we have the playbook, and that's the kind of what we're redesigning the website. We have a whole video series that we're creating and so on and so forth. And that's like the whole thing we're pushing out into the world now is like, here's the answer. Like everyone can just have it for free. I don't care. Like the whole point is being the force of change. And it's like he's saying is like, we've gone through the struggle of what these things are. And we had just done for the VBMA in Michigan State. Nailed it. There we go. All right. Is that we just had a whole thing on strategic planning. And it's like, well, to talk about traction, like traction is actually how we started strategic planning. We started with traction. We don't do traction anymore. We do kind of like the PAW Health like version of traction on strategic planning. So that's when we talk about the after action. And to say, that's the whole point is there's 2 things I want to point out that I don't think that you actually realize that you said within this podcast is that what you said about the university is it's not their fault. That's because you're accountable. So the first thing that you can say is, well, I didn't learn these things and I wasn't day one ready because it's the university's fault. You're like, well, it's not their fault. You're like, well, it actually has to do with experience and like the caseload was actually exposed to. That's critical thinking. That's systems thinking. That is something that we're talking about strategic planning. That's the accountable type thing. But when we start to hear like if we interview students or if we have new hires, it's like, or we have new hires right out of school and they're like, well, I don't know this because school didn't teach me that, so I don't know. Like, okay, for me, I'm like, oh my God, excuses, and it's because it is. It's like, I actually don't care that you don't know. I just want to create an avenue by which we can learn. And that's where, like I said, kind of putting all of that out there, it's like, no, the after action is actually something that's a tool of learning, kind of leading into now where you guys are at in your careers, because that's kind of what precipitated this as well, is you had that same exact experience where it was just like not caution to the wind, but it was just like I think what let me preface this a little bit. So we often come across people in our clinical setting and also in our lives that they're interpreted as being slow. So Emily's actually one of them as well, one of our MSS. So she's interpreted as being slow. But there's a difference between being slow and being efficient. So if you have someone who's slow but never makes mistakes, right. Is that actually someone who's slow versus someone who speeds through it, makes more mistakes, and there's cleanup on the end? Right. So which are we? Yeah, right. So which are we interpreting, or which are we valuing? Yeah. And the reality is we value both. Yep. So you have circumstance where you got to just rush through it. You have times where you need to be very pragmatic, and that's actually what I really enjoyed about you three kind of coming on all at once, is because I got all of you doing different things.
Yeah, we're all different.
Yeah, absolutely. And so then also it was a matter of pairing you with individuals with whom I felt you harmonized the most. So coming into the case that then you had managed is kind of a very similar circumstance where it was like, fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
Just nailed it. Like,
that was a very exciting day.
Take me through that, because that was like, that was a fist pump, like, boom.
Yeah.
You know?
It wasn't until the end of the day where I was like, wow, that just happened.
Yes.
Because I was just nervous
just
the
in
whole
it.
time.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah. So it was a cat. I'm trying to remember. I think it was like a 1 to 2 day history of vomiting, not eating, that kind of thing. Cat was like fine. Otherwise, physical exam, no big deal. It was one of those things, informed consent, like we can do x-rays, we can just send home with Serenia and see how the cat does. And the caregiver was like, I really think something's wrong with him. He's not usually like this. Like, I don't know of him eating anything or getting into anything. I'm not sure, but let's take some x-rays. So I can't even remember. I think we did do an EPOC too.
It was blood, EPOC, barium for sure.
So EPOC was on the abnormal side, and I was like, ooh, all right. We did x-rays. I was like, ooh, also don't like that.
Yes,
so
bad.
Bad,
yes,
right?
Yes.
So I let the caregiver know, and I was like, this is where we're at, kind of same thing. We could do a barium series. We could go straight to surgery, or you could take home and see how he does. And she was like, let's do barium. And I was like, okay. Yeah. I had done several barium series thus far, and they were all pretty much, made it to the colon, go home.
And a story.
Yeah. This one was awesome.
Yeah.
And Heather was jealous, I will just say. She's like, I've never had one that's shown up. But we took it like initially right after barium, and then we did like the 30 minutes and then the 90 minutes. There was no difference between the 30 and 90 minutes. The barium stopped. You could see the foreign material. I was like, oh, this is bad.
Yeah, bad.
I need to go to surgery. Like, it was just one of those, like, this is what has to happen.
Yep.
And just a shout out to Dane, because he likes to mess with me. And just to pair off where you said you tried to pair us with someone that we would work well with. I love working with Dane.
Yeah.
He's
amazing.
He helped me so much.
Yeah.
But his little quirks,
best.
he came in and saw that barium series, and I told him, he saw it first, and I said, don't say anything. I want to go in there and I want to make my diagnosis. He helps me out a lot, but I was like, let me, I want to do it. So I come back out and I'm like, oh, Dane. And he was like, yeah, I thought it made it beautifully to the colon. Like, this cat can go home. And I was like, oh my gosh, I should not be a doctor.
Yeah.
Like, what? And he was like, just kidding. So he got a lot of flack for that.
Yeah.
Barium series, like, this got to go to surgery. Called the caregiver. I was like, this is what we got to do. Yeah. And then it was like, oh, wow, it's me. Like, I've got to take this cat to surgery. Like, it's me here today. Like, let's do it. Yeah. That was my first abdominal explore, which was pretty exciting. And I did it. I did it myself. You were there. And
because it was about the time that I had showed up, and you were like, I'm going to do this surgery. And I was like, you're going to do it? You're like, I'm going to do it. I'm like, go do it. Yeah. Like, you're not asking for permission. You're just telling me what you're doing. Like, right. Go.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. And then just nailed it.
Just did it.
Yeah. And that was it. And it like sewed it up, closed it up, sewed it up, tested it, all fine. And then it was home, same thing, next day.
Yep.
So where was the actual foreign material at?
I believe it was proximal jejunum, I think. It was like a cat toy. As soon as got it out, I could see.
Past the flexure.
Yeah, it wasn't a difficult area.
A little downstream.
Somewhere between the stomach and the anus.
Yeah.
Yes.
Small intestines. Small intestine.
Yes.
Just a single enterotomy.
Yes. Yeah.
Got it out. But as soon as I saw it was colorful, when I told the caregiver what it was, she was like, oh, she's like, I know exactly what that is.
Yeah.
But that was just a really exciting moment, because I had done a gastrotomy with you before, but you were scrubbed in. You were kind of showing me how to do it. Yeah. So when I was in this surgery, honestly, I didn't know, was it going to be in the stomach? I assumed it was going to be in the intestine based on the barium series, but I didn't know. Yeah. So when I got in there, I'm like, oh, and I'm like, ooh, I haven't done an enterotomy before. You had came in, you're like, oh, you got this? And I was like, yeah. I was like, I haven't done an enterotomy before. And you're like, oh, do you want me to scrub in? And I was like, no.
Yes.
And that was a big moment.
That's a huge moment.
For me,
Massive.
I don't have a lot of confidence. That's one thing I have to work on. But I was like, no, you know what? I want to do this. You're here if I need you and to ask questions. And that's exactly what I need, but I need to do it myself.
That's it, man.
And I did.
That's it.
And I
You
went
fucking
home.
nailed it.
It was awesome.
Nailed it.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. And then, last night I get a text from Christina saying, hey, just to let you know, your girls handled a full explore, just to let you know. And I was like, honest to God, I was sitting there. I was playing video games with my friends and we were on Discord. Doesn't matter. So I was reading it on my phone and I was like, and I stopped and I just looked at it and I was like, I just set my phone down. And I'm like, they didn't call. Like,
we just did it.
Yeah, I was like, they didn't call. And like, it was another one of those moments where I was just like, is it happening? Is it happening? Like, I didn't get that call, like, we might need you to come in.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, or like, what is this patient's diagnosis? Now, don't get me wrong, this isn't an aversion to call. Like,
No.
if you need confirmation of diagnosis, if you need confirmation of
we
surgery.
will still be calling.
Yeah, of
We'll
course.
still call the time.
Yeah, please. That's not what
got
this
like
is.
the next 5 years of phone calls.
Yeah, that's right. I'm not disparaging that or discouraging that. What I'm saying is, like, good fucking job. Yeah. Good fucking job. Like, yeah, fist bump that. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
Didn't even call, handled it, patient discharged, end of story.
Yep.
Like, that's massive.
Yes.
Like, do you guys have any idea from a year ago today? Like, do you...
No, this is a massive, massive difference. And I mean, even for me, I'll say like the last 4 days, I think I've had an abdominal surgery every single day.
Nice.
I have. I came in over the weekend.
That's true, you did. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was,
yeah.
yeah.
So
Saturday,
it was
Sunday,
like
yeah.
a literal like full circle of like the first one just ended up being an Explorer, nothing done, but like got to see pale intestines.
Yes, right. Yep.
So got to see some like abnormal
abnormality.
stuff.
Yep.
Next day was taking biopsies with you.
Yep.
I hadn't done that
Yep.
on my own. I saw you do it like once, like
Yeah.
whatever, but
Yeah.
got to do it.
Yeah, my mouth, your hands. So it was
Yes.
like, yep,
Yeah.
you do it, throw, yep.
Yeah. Monday was the
big
nightmare
one,
procedure.
the nightmare.
Yep.
And I honestly feel like slightly after that, I was like, well,
Yeah.
it's got to be somewhat easier than that.
Right? We can do anything.
But it was
Yes.
also, I think, just like us feeding off of each other. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
Heather was there, and so she was like, if you guys want to learn, have at it.
Right,
Oh, yeah.
I'll
I'm
be
here.
here. Like,
Yeah.
so we still had
Yeah.
like
It's-
a more,
Heather's
a
got a
more
net surgeon.
We had
Yeah,
an
we had a
adult in the
net.
building.
Yeah.
There's an adult in the building.
Yeah,
Yes.
But
Yes.
you were like, yeah, I want to do this. And she had like, you had taken the case and
Right.
like had been walking through it. And I was like, I'll be here with you, whatever.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I was like, scrub
We'll
in.
tag
Let's
it.
do this.
but it was like the epitome of like see one, do one, teach one.
Absolutely.
Of like
Yes.
biopsies.
That's all
it
I
was like,
thought about.
Yes.
literally all
Yes.
I was thinking about. And I was like, this is completely
Yes.
full circle.
Yes.
And just,
Yeah.
I think like,
Full circle, 1 year out of school.
Right.
yes.
Yeah, by the way, that's a quick turn.
Yes.
If you don't know that math, that's
Right.
really,
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
fast.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't happen.
No.
Like, you did it, but
Yeah.
that was because you worked in an ER by yourself and you
Yeah.
didn't have a choice.
Correct.
Like,
Yes.
it was like, hey, kid, here's a fire, step in it. Whereas,
Yeah.
like,
Where this was, like we were saying, like we had help. I mean, we had
Right. You
Heather
had-
in there willing. She was coming in, you know,
Yeah.
still
Yeah, she was
checking
popping in. Like, are you guys okay? She was like, are you sure?
no one
Like,
came out.
I know. She was like, you don't need me? Like, what?
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean, we had each other.
Yeah.
Like,
and
Yeah.
I had never done biopsies before, so it was literally see one, do one, teach one so many times. You taught Christina
Yeah.
2 days earlier.
Yeah.
She taught me during that surgery.
Yeah.
which,
It was like it was just
Yeah.
awesome. It was
Yeah.
awesome to see.
which was also part of that text why I sent it to you because I
Yes.
was like, if dear Lord,
Yes.
if
Right.
something goes
Yeah. Something
wrong,
goes
I need
wrong.
you to know.
Yes.
I will not be okay.
right.
And
Yeah.
if you ever look at Lauren taking biopsies and you're like, that's wrong.
Yeah.
That
it
is-
is.
I'll take the blame. We know where it falls
There we
off.
go.
I'm going to be accountable to that one.
Yes.
She
Yes.
says.
Yes. Yeah. So, kind of pull the veil back a little bit on the wizard, right? So, that was my plan. So my plan was when you guys came on is I'm like, I'm taking a gamble. I'm like, not a gamble on the success of my organization. Like, I know it's going to be successful because I'm a narcissist. But so the gamble that I was making was I'm like, I bet you if we invest the time for 3 months and teach them everything that we have to know and create an environment. Now, it's a 5-year gamble, right? So that if I create an environment where we have the opportunity to succeed, we have a team that's rallied around the same cause, the same purpose, we're here for the same thing, and we create this environment where the veterinarian only has to focus on doing veterinary things. That is ultimately what the solution is. So we talk about our creating accountability. We talk about our collaboration loop and so on and so forth. That's why, like I said, I think I'm so full is because I talked about the first one. The second one is we actually hit success. Is that we collaborated enough times, we moved around enough times. I mean, there's been veterinarians who come and go over the years, but it's still like, no, we have the solution. The solution is culture, core values, and direct support. That's the solution. Right. So for us, and that's what we talk about our on the industry overview, we talk about the culture and core value section. We talk about our education system. We've put everything we have into those 2 things for the last 5 years because I've doubled down. Ben and everyone, we've all doubled down on this idea that if we develop those 2 things, there's nothing that can stand in the way in the life of young professionals. Like, you two are the success of all, and not to say you two, because I mean, obviously Rhiannon as well. Like, she just has a whole separate podcast coming because we're going to talk to her about working nights and so on and so forth. Like, that's a whole different
different ballpark,
a whole different thing. But that's where you guys are actually. That's why, like I said, that's the second thing is I feel so full is because you guys are the success of what we have been trying to do for years. Because to be where you're at in 5 years is totally your hard work. That's not the point. You guys have come a long way because you put in the time and effort. We just had to set the stage for you to act on. Right. That's it. So that's why, like I said, for me, that's the second thing that I realized. The first one is that's selfish. I never have to do surgery alone again. The second one is, holy shit, they didn't even call me. Right. Like, didn't even call me. Like, that is so massive, and I'm so proud of you guys. I honestly, I mean, all of us are. We couldn't be more proud. But I mean, that's it. Like, that's if you're ever looking for like a certificate, if you're ever looking for a check mark, if you're ever looking for a medal, like y'all bona fide. Like, you are it. That is the end of it. Any confidence issues you have moving forward, like first year out of school, I guarantee you are light years ahead of your classmates. Not that you should ever compare yourself to other people.
Yeah.
Yes. However, if we look at the ability to perform, I think you guys have had a meteoric rise in such a very short amount of time. And that was kind of the intent of this podcast. I really wanted you to really acknowledge and be aware of where you've come. Like, and again, all we did was set the stage. I'm not taking any credit for your success because you guys really, there's so many different factors, being accountable, willing to learn, like go ahead and have those emotional moments, get the emotions out, but let's focus on what is actually accountable. What can we do to learn? What can we do to grow? Because the emotions are going to be there. That's going to happen to all of us, some less than others. But like, that's it. I like I said, I very, very proud of y'all. Right. Yeah, amazing. Yeah,
we wouldn't have done it without the stage, though. We need the stage. We still needed the opportunity and the chance to be able to do everything and grow. I mean, definitely not knocking ourselves, like you said. We had to have the mindset, the willingness, accountability, but
if you don't have
if you don't have the support, if you don't have the place to do it,
we would. I mean, I think we both struggle with confidence. Is like our 100% or one of our biggest things.
Yeah, how is that going? Like, because I know, like, we did that thing that I still am trying to, like, artfully create in my head about, but I had sent you the video of yourself, right? About, like just
talking. I can talk other people up all day.
No, that's her that is her solution, is that she is so good at mentoring. Like, she's an incredible mentor. Yeah. Has a hard time when it has anything to do with herself.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So it's like if she's, and that was, I noticed that like the first 3 weeks, like of when we were mentoring last summer.
Yeah.
Like anytime Lauren would ask Christina questions,
just bang, bang.
Yes.
Here's all the answers, and I'm like,
she has mentored me for the past 5 years.
I'm like, where the fuck did that come from? I was like, all right, that's it. I'm calling bullshit on this whole thing. I'm like, she knows. No. But
that is so true.
Yeah.
That is you.
Yeah, it's a very unique thing. Yeah.
But that's we have kind of beat it relentlessly for the last few podcasts about that kind of culture risk, right? That low confidence, high competence, right?
Yeah.
Where like you see that of, I know you can do this.
Yeah. The culture risk.
cultural risk. Thank you.
Yeah, cultural risk. Yeah.
Of that low confidence scenario, but like it's hard to say like I feel like just massively more confident because it's something that builds up over time. Yeah. Mm-hmm. But have you noticed like market changes in yourselves you must have because of yesterday
didn't call.
Yeah. Right, didn't call.
Right?
So there's something that's happening, but like I guess maybe a better question is, was there a tipping point for you guys? Was yesterday a tipping point where it's like, okay, we can do it? Right.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think so too.
How do you, how does that feel? Like it's obviously I think professionally it will be a day that you guys will probably remember forever. Right. Hopefully anyways, there will be other positives that you'll also remember, but like a reason that you'll remember that is because of the emotional impact that, it made on you of like, fuck it, we did it. Right. It's the same as he shows up 5 years ago to Lansing and you don't remember a word that he said, but you remember that he was there and that whatever it was good. It's that emotional impact thing. Yeah. Like how are you translating that? Like just try and put words to the thing that doesn't have words.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll say again that it's something I usually look back on, like, except for, like, the big days. Like, yes, the surgery, certain things like that are huge that I'll remember and be like, oh, wow, I was confident. But it's usually a lot more I look back on. And I'm like, wow, like, I have grown in my confidence. Because absolutely that's something that both of us struggle with. Yeah.
But I think sometimes, too, it's, like, hard to reflect on yourself. Like, I feel like when me and Rhiannon were talking one time, and she just, like, I think made a comment like, oh, you do a lot of, like, space. And I was like, I do. Like, I don't know. Like, it's just like you need someone else to kind of like remind you of like, it's hard to like, you're so focused sometimes on like where you want to go and like the things that you're lacking that like it's hard to like stop and be like, but where am I versus where I was?
Have I been?
Good luck.
No.
No.
I struggled in that a lot, but I actually have kind of forced myself over the past few months to like think back on that. One thing specifically, I remember like coming in, I could not do cystos. Like I could not get urine. I was like, I can do blood draws, like, and comparing yourself to others, something that I struggle with, especially comparing myself to Christina a lot and Rhiannon, especially all of us like in the same boat. And I was like, everyone else is getting these, why can't I? And now I don't even think of it. It just happens. Like and to me, like I make sure I remember that. I'm like, there was a point where I could not do cystos. I had to have other people come in. Sure, I'll struggle with one occasionally, but now I like get them consistently. So I make myself remember those small things because I do struggle with confidence a lot. So I'm like,
well, and I think something important you said, because we always talk, like, where you guys were talking about comparison last time. So I think, obviously, great to be coming in with, like, two of your classmates and stuff, because, like, it's a shared experience of,
yes.
Hey, we're new, like, we don't know what we're doing. It's not just
one of you in a team of seasoned veterinarians.
Right. It's, like, beneficial, but at the same time, you're coming with people, like, you graduated, we all graduated from Michigan State, we all started at the same time. Right. So it's like you see them doing something you're not, and it's very easy to be like, well, why not? We had the same experience.
Exactly.
I mean, obviously there's different, but like same schooling and all that stuff. So
And that's actually why like I pitch so hard on growth mindset, because once I started working with Ben and I started to really actually transition my mind, and that's why I talk about all the time about fixing yourself. You step out of yourself into the exam room, out of your exam room into the clinic, out of your clinic into the community, out of the community into the industry. So like as I started to kind of make that transition in the last 4 or 5 years, is that I've seen a lot more people in different stages of their careers, ones that have been seasoned, ones that aren't, the ones that are new, and so on and so forth. And that's why what we pitch so hard all the time is just having a growth mindset. Because as soon as you can fix yourself and get out of your own head, that's it. So, but it's all internal. You're like, oh, I started doing cystos. It just happened one day and I don't even think about it anymore. But it was like there was a period of time where it negatively impacted your mindset. But to have then a growth mindset to be like, oh, I don't have it right now, but I will eventually. That's then being like, oh, it actually didn't negatively impact me because I knew I would get it one day. But then if I don't get it one day, that's okay too. But it's hard. It's hard to learn that. So I've seen a lot of people through their careers never get to that point where they can ever accept that they won't be good at something. And that's why actually, truthfully, I joke so much about being terrible at dentals, because I'm like, I need to show vulnerability. Like there's a lot of people who are like, he can obviously do anything, which actually you had said one time. And do you remember what my retort was to you on that?
I don't.
It's okay.
It was fun. I mean, I was like, oh.
Yeah.
But.
The only and so what you had said at that time was you were just like, but you're just so good at everything. And I was like, the only reason why you can say that is because I'm exceptionally good at forgiving myself.
That's
yeah.
right.
So it's not like you're seeing me at a point in my career where like I've made 100% of the mistakes that, well, that's a funny stat. I made 100% of mistakes that I made. But anyway, so, the mistakes that I made, you don't see that. But I've grown from those. But for me to say I'm terrible at dentals, which I am, that's not a joke. Like I'm terrible at them, but it's also very humanizing, to be like, there's just some things I just gave up on it. Like, I mean, to be honest, I just gave up on doing dentals. One, because I kind of didn't want to. Secondly, Katie is amazing at them.
Yeah. Yes.
She's phenomenal. So I'm like, I ain't even reaching that bar. Like I'm only ever going to be subpar.
I'll be mediocre at best.
Dude, I ain't even breaking the same playing field. It's like I play flag football. She's in the NFL. Like no, it's I'm like the guy on the field who like plays flag football with his buddies and tears his ACL. Like no. Anyway, that diverged. So that's again just being like there's gonna be some stuff you're just not going to be able to get, but the idea of growth mindset is I can actually there are some things I will get eventually, or there's other ways that I can help grow the team. And growing the team may be individual where I grow myself, others team one do and teach one.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that like kind of stuck to me was like that first weekend or whatever where it was me and you and Rhiannon taking over.
That was it.
And like when Rhiannon came on, like I think you were like, hey, you want to like see this case? I'm not even rounding you on it, but do you want to like hear about it? And she was like, yeah. And we talked and we like collaborated, and it was just like, I think just like a pivotal moment of like, wow, we all really are in growth mindset. It's like, this doesn't even necessarly relate to me. I have nothing to do with this case, whatever. But like,
she was
I want to learn.
Right.
Like, I want to learn what you know. Like, what did you talk to Carlo about? Like, about this case? Like,
Bingo.
what's ideas? You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like we all are like, it's hard to learn everything. So it's like, oh, you had this experience. Tell me about it. So then I can learn from what you learned from that. So then if I ever see this down the road, like,
we feed off each other a lot and help. For sure.
That's final phase. So my final phase of the plan was to get all three of you on the
together.
Same weekend.
Yes.
Well, we're there.
Because that was one of the questions I wanted to ask was like 2 days ago was the first day that you guys worked together.
Right.
And obviously
official.
Right. Like you were the two doctors that were here in our doctor schedule. And that's something that I saw that and I was like, I really want to know what's going on in their heads, right? Because you guys have been together for so long and you've been through so much shit together. And then there's like this kind of like this separation so you can go through your own process of learning and growing and getting your foundation set as a doctor. Right. And then you come back together. Yeah. And like you kind of already answered the question because of what happened yesterday and just saying, well, fuck it, we're going to do it.
Yeah. Right.
But like, what's it like working with your best friend?
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. I'm so excited.
Yeah. I think, I mean, obviously over the years we've like learned, I mean, it was not life or death, but studying was like, we always studied together. Right. So we know kind of the best way to communicate with each other and like how we each learn and everything. And we also recognize just emotional responses that we have. So I think it makes it just
so it wasn't like a ton of unknowns coming into it. I mean, there definitely was. Like we never actually worked together or have been doctors together, but we're like, well, it's got to be similar to everything else we've done. Right. And granted, we've only had 2 days, but it's been great.
We've been doing really good.
Yeah.
We were like,
we say to each other too. Every once in a while, we'll just look at each other and be like, we're doing it.
Yeah.
Like, we really did. We did that during the surgery. Like we literally like fist bumped during the surgery. Yes. And it's been super exciting. Like. Yeah,
that's cool. Because that's one of those things, right? Like one of the things that they say, because in business schools, don't get into business with your best friend. That's like a traditional like hard line because it has the capacity.
How about with your wife?
Well, we're not gonna go there.
No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I've been in the room with those fights. We don't need to go there.
We have discussions.
Those are heated discussions.
That's how we communicate. We're both Italian.
It's just very passionate.
Well, anyway, keep going.
So like just like kind of that baseline rule. You just don't do that. Well, then you take that and then you root cause it, right? Well, why don't you get into business with your best friend? Well, it's because you don't know how to collaborate when there's extra variables on the line. Yeah. And I think that, and this was kind of one of the things that I was hoping to do with this, and because it doesn't happen often enough, is to say thank you to you, because the thing that you take for granted because you knew it was necessary, but no one was doing it, but you said, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyways, is you set the stage. Because what the stage did is it said, okay, I can take two people who are best friends and I can literally put them on the floor right next to each other, and there's like zero fear between the two of you that's ever going to create an impasse in your friendship. And to go to have a scenario that allows for that type of collaboration is so rare. They literally write about it in books to not fucking do it.
That's so true.
Welcome to PAW.
We're going to rewrite that book.
Yeah, we're going to write our own book.
So I just want to say thank you for your time, effort, and patience, because, and yes, you are fulfilled by it, which is great, but you're also creating, and through the work of you and Katie and all of the countless hours and like
discussions,
you created a stage that allowed something that if in theory can't happen. And now it's the only way that it could have happened. So thank you. Yeah. I just wanted to say thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
We'll say thank you as well.
I think that made sense.
So don't basically don't take your own work for granted either. And note. Now obviously the footprint's a lot bigger now, so it's pretty easy to see the market change that's happened. But
one of the things that I said when Katie and I were at the gala for when we got the Young Alumni of the Year, at the gala, of course everyone's there, president, university president, everyone. I said, Katie's my lightning rod. So like I have a lot of ideas and there's a lot of sparks, but like she's like, no, this is where that lightning needs to strike. So it's like, honestly, everything that it is truthfully impacted and directed almost exclusively by her. I mean, my head, and I mean that's kind of a funny I think is my head is constantly in the clouds. So for me to be like, yeah, let's do this and this and this and this, is like there was a lot of bad ideas along the way, but
there was. I can attest to that.
Now listen, I will say this in my own defense: they were fantastic ideas. They weren't easily implementable. That's was my way of copping out.
Sure.
I'll
give you that.
I think there's gratitude all around. To be honest, and that's I think was the message that I was trying to get out 5 years ago. Because I make the joke that when I started coming to those meetings at Michigan State, I was writing checks that we could not yet cash. As I'm like, I knew it was going to take us time to develop the things that I knew it needed to be. So when it's like, guys, this is what we're doing up there, I'm like, okay, we have to, and I think I told you this before, but it's like when you guys were coming on, as first year grads, I'm like, all right, we wrote a pretty big freaking check 4 years ago. I'm like, we have to be able to fulfill that. And thankfully all the things fell in place and now it is what it is. But yeah, a lot of hard work, with everyone. I mean, the whole team, but,
and I, like everybody that's here is just thankful for it.
Yeah. Someone had to stand up, and now we're all standing up,
As we're all sitting down.
Yeah. As we're all sitting down.
Do we need to stand up right now?
Yeah. Right. I feel like we do.
Yeah. But that's, but again, I mean, I think that's what kind of, obviously we had the VBMA thing tonight, but I mean, that was like a huge part of the conversation was just, I mean, we have the education portal that we're opening up come May, June, on the website. I mean, all these different things to just be like, here it is. I make the joke because, I mean, for me, I'm one of the dumbest people I've ever met, and it's big part of that is that failure mindset that I had gotten as sort of the negative impact of culture coming out of university and so on and so forth. So there's self-worth issues there, which again, I've just kind of chucked away over the years, but it's like, there is still that idea that like, I just don't know what I'm doing, but somehow it works. And like, but that's where it's just like, well, it's not only up to me. That's the beauty is that even if I have shortcomings, and I think that's when we start to look at that collaborative process, we start to look at strategic planning, we start to look at how you implement these things, the work we're trying to do with university and, locally and all these different types of things. It's like, it it's easier to consume knowing you're not the only one eating it. You know, so it's just like, oh, I don't actually have to be good at everything. I can just sort of be a human again, you know, and just kind of not be great at stuff, but, you know, still have a vision, you know. Right. So, but yeah, that's amazing. So, you know, it being that it's almost a full year that you guys are into the gig and all that, like, what are you looking forward to? Like, what's the dream, I guess, now that you've already kind of done it? Yeah, you have another. Yeah. I don't know how to word that question. This far.
Yeah, we're just taking it day by day.
Gosh, I mean, just bettering ourselves, I guess, every day. I mean, no matter what, there's always going to be new things to learn, new stuff to do. I mean, that's been the beauty too of working with, like specifically Dane. I mean, he's been out, you know, for years, 15 years or more, and he still loves what he does, and every day even he's like, oh, I've never seen that before, and I'm like, wow, like I so love what I do, like this is exciting. I get to do that for so many years.
I work more with Janessa and Heather, but like same, and they're all willing to like be like, well, what did you learn about this? Like even I'm like, you're asking me?
Yes.
What? Like this is okay.
So just honestly just looking forward to
just keeping her going,
getting more comfortable with surgery, more comfortable with everything, and
What about you?
Me?
Yeah, you. I mean, you got 10 million things that you want to do, but like,
what am I looking forward to?
Yeah, especially with these two.
With these two specifically? I guess with you two specifically, just being a mentor resource. Like that's like for me, you didn't call. Like my job's done.
Right.
Like honestly, like truthfully, I mean that's like I said that like and it was betting on green and roulette. Like, I mean, it hit. And like I said, for you guys, it's, just
forest green.
Yeah. Well, forest green. Yes. Technically. Yes. I don't know. I mean, I think honestly, you're exactly what you need to be. I mean, growth mindset, just keep it as it comes. I don't have much there. Just very, very proud, you know, the whole thing. So, you know, but for me personally, what are my next plans? Well, I don't know.
Sleep,
like world domination,
sleep and eat. Maybe take a vacation.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'd like to get to Mackinac again. That'd be nice. Yeah. Katie and I, we rented a. This is actually she was pregnant with Stella, so that was the last time we had a vacation. So that was like 8 years ago, I think, something like that.
Okay,
so
you're due for one. All right.
Yeah, it was awesome. B&B. We spent like a whole week there. I think it was like amazing. Yeah, that's the only place to vacation. Don't go anywhere else. But anyway,
I will say one of the things that I'm actually kind of, this sounds ridiculous, but one of the things I'm actually excited about is, because it's inevitable, is like the first time that you guys like kind of fall on your face a little bit.
I'm sure it's already happened.
Oh yeah.
It may have. It hasn't been substantial enough to the point where I've heard all about it, which means it hasn't been that bad.
I think Trevor made a comment to me once, I think over the summer when I was kind of like starting. He was like, oh, like, you know, like just try not to kill the thing. Like, you know, and I was like, he's like, you haven't done it yet, but like it's going to happen. I was like, well, that we don't know of. Like, I don't know. They go home and sometimes you just don't know.
Right. I just, for me, like, I'm just kind of, I'm excited to see the fact that it won't just annihilate you. And just the fact that you guys have done so much work in building up your foundation to the point where you know that you can you can have a big stumbling point and it won't absolutely paralyze you.
Well, I mean, I know we're just kind of letting her roll, but I mean,
I feel like I'm missing something.
No, as we're talking about it, I'm like, this definitely already happened.
But as you know, as the afterthought, already water under the bridge. Yeah. But yes.
Right. Good example.
But I had a Humane Society spay. We're all talking about this one, right?
Yes.
That's what I was thinking of.
Definitely the main one.
This is the only one.
Unless there's something.
The other accountable events were nonsense. So this one, yep.
Oh my gosh. Stop it, Carlo. She's not going to be able to sleep. Oh gosh. Okay.
But no, it was a space surgery. Did it. came in the next day for work, and like Janessa kind of pulled me aside.
Because the hospital is overnight.
It was community today, so they stay overnight. Anyways,
Yep.
She pulled me aside. She like sandwiched it in between like a bunch of other bad news. So I was like, thank you. She was like, all right, so this is happening, blah, blah, blah. Also, your spay has a hemobabdomen. We need to go back to surgery. And like all this stuff. And I was like, what?
Yeah. It was like 1, 2, 3, 4. You're like, wait a minute, what was 3 again?
She was like, don't freak out, but like, okay, blah, blah, blah. And I was just like, what? Okay, done. But I mean, the first thing she had said to me was like, nobody's mad at you.
Yeah.
I was like, she was like, we've talked to Lisa. Like, Lisa's not mad. Like, Carlo's not mad. I'm not mad. It's just, it is what it is.
Yeah.
Plan to go to surgery. She was awesome because I was like, well, as much as I'm upset about this, which cried, it's fine. You have your first emotional response.
Gotta have
it's
it.
fine. You have to have it. It was like a first thing. So it rocked me, which sure.
Yeah.
But
because that's one of the big fears as a practicing veterinarian when you come out of school is like in school they teach you how to do spays and neuters, which I still to this day argue that spays are among the most complex procedures we do.
I didn't do one. I did a neuter.
And
they're like, that's good.
Yep.
No.
Like in school.
In school.
In
Okay.
school.
Gotcha.
I did like an externship with spays and neuters. But
True. Yeah.
But
those
even
are,
like dogs were like, they were like, that's complicated. Let's
you guys
maybe
small
do
cats
one.
and
Cats, and like puppy, like
Yeah.
really small dogs. So
so the big dog
they
ones
know,
are different.
Yeah.
Very minimal surgery experience out of school.
Yes.
But
To
that's
sum it
like
up.
the fear, like the panic. Like I've been out 15 years. I'm actually still afraid of bleeding abdominal spay 15 years later. Like it's still just an ingrained fear, which again, like I said, I think it's a very complex procedure to learn when you're in school, if given the opportunity, of course.
Yeah. Right.
But so that came to fruition.
Yeah.
So one of her patients actually ended up having, a bleeding, portion from surgery caught the next morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, to me, process-wise, success, because it's a team.
Right.
It's a team.
Yeah.
It was caught
Right.
in-house by one of our doctors prior to discharge. It was not just like, meh,
Right.
it's kind of pale. Bleh.
Yeah. It was just like, this is a thing. And as like hard as it was, I was like, I want to go into the surgery and like I just need, it wasn't even I want to, it was like I need to. I need to know what happened.
Yeah.
I just need to know what happened.
Yeah. Growth mindset.
And like everyone was like on board. They're like, Janessa was like, I will handle outpatients.
Yeah.
Carlo and you were going to do the surgery. Like,
yeah,
Nice.
yeah, and honestly, for me, like when Janessa called me, she's like, "I think there's a hemoabdomen." I was like, "What's the readings or whatever?" And she's like, "Well, it's blah blah blah." I'm like, "Nah, I'll be on the way," And she's like, "Well, Christina's gonna be here in like 20 minutes." I'm like, "Just tell her it's fine. It's not a big deal. Like, we're just gonna go do this thing, and then I'm gonna go home." Like.
No big deal.
Yeah. But so then to come out of that though, so I agree with you. I agree.
That's kind of cool though. Like you can realize what you cite as like one of the biggest fears installed in every practicing veterinarian to not maybe the 100% fullest extent, but pretty damn close.
Sure. Yeah.
And then just be like, I gotta fix it.
Right.
Like I'm not gonna fall into my shell.
Exactly.
I mean, it was like have your response, like have the emotions, like do that.
Yep.
But also, like, nobody really around was kind of like coddling too much, which was kind of, it was just like, this is the step, like, all right, now we have to go fix the thing and we're just going to go do it. And like,
Right.
Yep. And I think what I like about your perspective on that is when we talk about that collaboration part of creating accountability is that is exactly what it is that it's reality to ownership, and then you go through forgiveness to then solution, plan, and implementation. So for us, it was like you didn't even have to like ask for forgiveness. We're just like, shit happens, But to go through that response, that's when we talk about collaboration. We talk about growth mindset. We talk about sort of those levels of accountability. You're exactly right. Like that's what we're trying. That's what we teach. Is it's like you're gonna feel like trash, but it's also kind of like. But we also have a job to do, just go do that job, and that's what it is. So, I mean, I've been making a few snide remarks through most of this podcast about how like, well, I don't think I have any. I'm like, well, I hear about them, but truthfully, that's kind of the other side too, is when we have these accountable events. So that's a super tangible accountable event. So it's like blood in the belly after surgery, accountable event. black and white, right?
Yeah.
Or,
Right.
blood, not blood. So it's like, to have that. But then when we start to talk about case reviews, which we talked about after action, case reviews are another one of our tools that we use to create accountability. So case reviews are more one-on-one. After action is more of a group. So case reviews, there's proactive and reactive. Of course, reactive is when there's a complaint. Proactive is the see something, say something. So reactive case reviews is typically if we get a complaint or like this case didn't end how we intended it to or whatever. And that's why I kind of keep making the joke that it's like, well, I hear about them. I was running almost all the case reviews now that Janessa's the generalist. Like she does more of the case reviews. But like a lot of, any time that we would have received, and then truthfully, I make the joke. I don't know that you guys have had any, but I think.
I think I've had
you've had one or two. But the thing is like that's why I was so big on this last surgery with the duodenal flexor intestinal recession ectomosis is like to read that medical record is I'm like that is 100% defendable. So anytime we have reactive case reviews or we have a complaint or we have some other process where caregiver's upset or the outcome didn't meet the expectation or whatever it is, I haven't actually had an accountable event or a case review where there's actually been a point to teach, like to actually educate and to grow from. It's like there actually isn't anything here. All the stuff is written right there. That's pretty much the end of it. And that's actually, which actually we'll have to kind of bring up in Rhiannon's thing a little bit with state board complaints, is that like that's the whole point when those things come through. Like people are allowed to be mad. Like the human caregiver is going to go through their own emotional response. But it's like for me when I do case reviews, it's like if we actually have like if there was a medical mistake made, all right, let's play ball. What's the negotiation? What do you want? You want me to cover this or pay for that or do whatever? It's like that's completely understandable if a mistake was made because it's a pain we can learn from.
And it's like, well, how do we fix it?
Correct.
It's because you're to not disparage, but to use the word that will trigger you. You're being a little cavalier in the way that you're addressing that concern because it's you're making light or like no issue out of dealing with those complaints.
Sure,
But it's because it's like, well, it's just the right thing to do.
Correct.
Like I'm not going to shy away from this issue because I don't want to make a big deal out of it. It's like, no, I'm just going to solve it.
Right.
There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. So don't super just bypass the fact that you're just going to take the issue and face it head on versus run away from it.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, and I guess that's, part of me being who I am, you know, is I just always I mean, everyone, Janessa makes fun of me for being a robot and stuff, but like, I mean, I really do have a lot of emotion. I'm just incredibly and meticulously in control of it at all times, primarily because it's only ever about solutions with me.
Yeah.
So that's where when it's like, we have the hemoabdomen, it's just like, yeah, okay, all right, I'll quick eat breakfast. I'm just like, I was kind of thinking, I thought I was gonna make bacon and eggs today, but I'll just quick eat this. Like for me, it's just like, well, that's the solution to this. I just need to drive faster. But so but yes, I agree with I guess how we started on this kind of spinoff was essentially what's going to happen when you have negative case interactions, and up to this point, any case reviews that would have come through as reactive case reviews from caregivers, there hasn't been actual points at which we can educate or improve.
Right.
Sometimes it's just people like want to just be mad.
Right.
And that's what I've like thought about too, where I'm like, God, do I have any complaints or whatever? But like, I know I work in an environment where it's like, if there actually was something that was a true mistake or something I could do better or learn from, like,
we'd know about it.
No one's shy about telling
Someone
you.
would have told us.
Which is fine. That's what we want. Like, I don't want to keep making
correct.
the same thing and it not be right.
So that's trust.
Yeah.
So you're trusting that we are doing our job administratively if there's something that, and trust, respect, so on and so forth. But you're exactly right. You trust that if there was something we had to address, then we would. Yeah. And we would.
Do you want to know what my favorite example of trust in this room is, though, in the last, 6 months? Is when a caregiver's pissed off about a wait time and your reaction to it, you don't give a shit.
Which is just so not normally like
I know. People have told me that, and I'm like, do I do that? I guess I do, don't I?
So like, my, coming from the fact that was what I did for so long, and having to learn how to say a whole lot of nothing to make people feel better about what's happening. And not to say that nothing's happening, but it's like it's not to the full extent that they were hoping. Whatever. You know, everyone walks into our clinic with their level of expectations, and I reset those expectations.
Yes.
That's what CSS does. Yes. That job is hard.
Yes.
And my favorite part about your reaction to it is it's not that you don't care. It's the fact that you trust the people that do that role to the point that it's either they're going to do their job as well as they can, and they're going to solve the problem. And when I walk into that consult, it's going to be fine. Or that person's expectations were insurmountable from the get-go, and I'm just going to do my best, and it's just going to be what it is.
Yeah.
And like, I think it's, I think you just acknowledge that you take it for granted that you do that, but that mindset is huge in this game, because you're not gonna please everybody. And early on, when when Serve the Patient turned into Serve the Patient, Educate the Caregiver, actually, that staff meeting, what we noticed was when we were losing on Educate the Caregiver, and why it came about was because we were serving the caregiver, and we were actually taking away from educating them on what it took to serve their patient. And your mindset of, I don't actually, like, there's not something about me there's not a level of care that's gonna make me react in a way that's gonna take away from serve the patient.
Right.
Like, that's massive. Like, that's something that some people will literally never learn, and you kind of just like walked in the door with it. So good on you. So I just like,
well, let's so I'm gonna build on that just a little bit. So we typically try not to name specific Facebook groups or websites or whatever.
Let's just use the acronym.
No, I don't think I can. I have.
Does it start with an N?
I have promised myself that I will not actively disparage
those
that
words in a
particular
long time.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
I got it. Just mute that part. Cut that part out.
Cut the video
Never
out.
mind. I'm gonna have to blur your face.
Yeah, blur my face. Yeah.
Yes, we have talked about this before.
So, do you guys follow that group?
No. I do not.
You do not. Oh, okay.
Smart.
Okay, it's smart. So, okay, independent of that one then. So it doesn't matter. So it doesn't matter that I didn't say what that one was called. So I'm actually I'm curious about a lot of things all the time, constantly. How about, like, do you guys have contact? Because if you're not a part of that group, do you ever have contact with other veterinary groups or classmates or other people in the industry? Doesn't matter, Vet Girl or any of those other ones. Like, when those things start to come through, like, do you ever see or do you ever interpret or acknowledge or identify when people in those forums are exhibiting extreme victimhood?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess not commonly, probably from more like classmates and stuff, I guess. I don't
Well, it's just
follow
fine.
a lot
Which
of
is fine.
a lot
Yeah,
of
if it's
groups.
classmates or
Yeah.
whatever
But
too.
yeah.
Most
and,
vet stuff that I follow are like memes.
yeah,
so.
well,
Right.
well, yeah.
Honestly,
well.
yeah.
Like-
We just need a good laugh. I don't really want anything else. At the
But
end of the
I would
day.
say yes, there's definitely like individuals that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So my perspective is, or my question is, or curiosity is, if you have exposure to people who like cite this like the paragraph, because everyone toxic vents on Facebook, right?
Yes.
So it's like, do you ever, because this is something that I do, and that's ultimately why I had to unfollow the website, is like, I struggle so hard in reading posts like that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So what's your perspective on that when you read unaccountable posts on whatever platform it is? And you're like, do you think like, well, that person just doesn't get it, or they don't have the perspective, or we don't sympathize? Like, what is your, I'm very curious, because I know how I feel, but I know how Katie feels.
I feel like for me, if I was, I mean, and this could be me personally, if I'm truly going through like a struggle or something, I'm upset about something or whatever, I'm going to just talk to my family and friends. Like, I feel like when you start posting on social media where a bunch of random people, like, random high school people you grew up with that you're still friends with on Facebook follow, like, you're just kind of looking for
attention.
Attention. You just want people to feel bad for you and confirm that like you're in the wrong, or like you've been wronged or whatnot.
Right. Yeah, honestly. Same thing here. I guess I do a lot of eye rolling when I read those kind of things.
Yeah.
I really try not to judge, but I gotta be honest. Like, I'm a judgmental person. Like, everyone is slightly judgmental, but I guess very similar thing, and more like I just feel bad for them again that they don't have a better avenue to
like
seek help or something like that. Yeah.
So thank you. That's exactly where I was going with it. Is they don't have an actual resource.
Yeah.
So that's where I think for me, the industry is significantly in transition because we have, obviously there's tradition, there's corporate medicine, but then you kind of have this like in between group where it's like, well, they've been practicing for like 5 years, less than 10 years, and they've been out for a little while. They've been disenfranchised, at least in some capacity. Yep. And so what Ben and I have talked about, and Ben's actually creating this subjective objective victimhood. So there are times in which victims are created. So if you're murdered, like, you're a victim.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry.
The law says you were.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. The law says that you are a victim. So I won't go.
Well, and another example, just so it's not like super obscene, is one that you had with Sarai, right? So like, protocol was missed to the point that like somebody else had to make a sacrifice to cover somebody else's ass.
Yeah,
and that's another state where it is the actual implementation of a powerless state on another individual.
Yes. So like victim, even though we talk about because what we talk about is the drama dynamic.
Yep.
So we talk about exclusively the subjective victim.
Yep.
But there are times when objective victims are created.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. So part of where we're at in the industry right now is that there's these 5 to 10 year practicing veterinarians that there is a blurring of the line between who is an actual subjective victim and who is an actual objective victim.
And they don't know what to do with it.
Either
way.
Yeah, either way. So that's where, I think what we're trying, talk about being the force of change in the industry and really trying to come forward with like what we're doing and saying right out of school, that's why we're so passionate about integrating with veterinary professionals, nurses to veterinarians at the university level, because it's like, let's catch this stuff before you get out. Right. Let's try to have a system by which we can implement that which we're doing at PAW Health, which we've been troubleshooting for 5 years.
And we continue to.
Yeah, it never stops, never ends, and that kind of creates an open source to the management style in general. But yeah, so that's where for me, when I sort of read those types of posts, which I pretty much have excluded them from my life now, because what I ended up finding in the few circumstances that I tried to engage these individuals, is just being like, hey, this might not actually be a scenario where we have the entire picture to really validate or sort of argue who is and who is not right. We're just seeing one particular perspective. I would just get shit comments every single time I would post that, and it's just like, well, what are these emotional support groups for veterinarians? Like, I understand that, stress and, suicide rates and all that kind of stuff is very real in the veterinary industry. But I don't want to continue to sort of preach PAW Health, but I think for what we have done in 5 years to say that we've kind of abated a lot of that unnecessary conflict and inefficient process. And that was what I said. I was kind of just curious about your perspective. Have you ever seen sort of those rants or toxic venting or so on and so forth, and how that settles with you? Because for me, I'm just like, this person's so far out there. I don't actually know if this professional is able to reel back.
Right.
Or how far gone are they?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. It's more just kind of a lot of times it's what are you actually getting out of that post?
Yep.
Do you feel better?
Yeah. It was just posting it or
right. Yeah.
And I don't know. It's you always think too, just from a professional standpoint, I would never want to post about an interaction with a client because you don't know the way of the world. I don't know. What if that gets?
Oh, correct. Yeah. Once it's out there, it's out there.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Right. Or just other people see that and you're like, well, you just talked about a client that walked into your building.
Yeah.
And you don't know what the client's you don't know the exact interaction. What if they're just obviously they're going to be worried about their pets, they're coming in sick.
And I've flagged on those platforms before I unfollowed them. I flagged a lot of those comments because I'm like, how do you know the other veterinarian isn't part of this group?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
Right.
we like hold on here a second here, and
Yep.
then like, oh, you're actively disparaging a caregiver online, like, ugh, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's, and again, teach their
Or
own.
somebody you work with, like
Right.
it could be. I mean,
Yeah.
who are you talking about in
Yeah.
those posts?
Yeah.
But
And I even just take a little bit of a segue. Like any doctors I interact with on the human side, I actually ask them questions when I'm in the consult and they're here for whatever ailment or whatever. And I'm like, hey, actually, I have a question about like hiring and stuff. You know, so like, just, and it's weird. It's not really what I'm there for, but it's what I do, just because I'm curious. But yeah, they actually, same thing. They have employees basically Facebook posting about other employees they're working with. You know, like it's everywhere.
Yeah.
You know,
Right.
so it's, you know, I think again, one of the things we take for granted is like, that doesn't happen here.
Right.
You know,
Yeah.
but like why? And it's
Yeah.
like, oh, because we have shared purpose, but like why?
right.
Yeah.
And
You
I
know?
feel like anyone that kind of has that mentality doesn't seem to last long.
Yes, I was gonna say that too. Right.
You guys have seen a couple. You've seen a couple.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It just, yeah, it's got to be a fit for everybody. If you're not happy
Yeah.
at this job, like, or
Right.
any job, I mean, if you're not
Right.
happy where you're working, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was actually the same conversation that Annie and I sat in the old admin closet with
The old
closet.
X-ray processing room.
the old
technically.
admin closet.
Yeah.
oh my God, I forgot about that.
Me too.
Dude,
Wow.
sweat box.
We were talking to you about that building today and just how we
Yeah.
would be able to do nothing
No.
there.
No, I would quit.
Yes.
If we were still in that old building, I would quit.
Yeah.
There was a period of time, like the 3 months that we were out of it, but we still hadn't gotten Memorial Day kicked for 3 months, that I was like this nostalgic about it. Like
Yeah.
I was like, I kind of miss the old stomping grounds.
Oof.
And then Memorial Day hit, and I'm like, oh my God, thank God we have a parking lot.
Yeah. Yes.
I completely forgot my point.
Anyways,
Annie,
the
admin
coming back
closet.
around.
Yeah.
So, when we were going through the serve the patient, educate the caregiver process of building that out, a part of that was, it was right after we started doing the podcast. And when we were talking about the core values, one of the things that actually came up naturally, like in conversation, that I was like, hey, I'm really glad we recorded that, was actually it was the first time I had heard it. I don't know if it's the first time you had the thought, but it was the inclusion of the caregiver in the care team. And then we really expounded that out within educate the caregiver, because to educate, you also have to convey the core values of the company to that person.
Right.
You have to trust that person. You have to respect that person. You have to,
Yeah.
you seek to unify with them, and ultimately be accountable if they, bring something back to you.
Right. Right.
And that's that. It's you had just hit on it. Is like, you just trust the fact that they're there for the right reason, and that's the thing that I think is missing in those posts and all that, is like, if you're shit posting about a client or a caregiver, like, it's all out the window.
Yeah.
And that goes to bigger cultural issues of the
Us versus them,
the
and-
complete misconstruction of accountability and what it is, because the only way that those people know how to hold people accountable is by shit posting about them on
Yep.
Facebook, because that's the only power that they can find,
Yeah.
because they don't have a stage to actually do it right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like,
Well, actually, and just to segue just a small amount, that's when people are like, I'm going to sue you. Like, it's the same thing where they're
Yeah.
like, that's the only power they think they
Yeah.
have in that particular dynamic. And again, I'm not anticipating everyone to understand this, but we actually do legitimately have caregivers, because all of our complaints are written. So it's, if you call us up and like, it's like, okay, well, no, I definitely respect you have concerns. I need you to write those concerns down and send them to us. And it's like, fuck you. And then they hang up the phone. And it's like, whatever. But we do have caregivers that actually have very well constructed, like critical type letters where they're like, you know what? I know you guys are there to help. It's after hours. It's a stressful setting. Like, I understand all of 1, 2, 3, 4. And like, we're more than willing to blank, 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 blank. And they're like, but actually on this one thing, I really didn't like.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can I help you?
Right.
So there are times where you have people that field complaints in a very professional setting,
Right.
but everybody has that power.
And you need some of that too, because it's
Yes.
like, how else are we supposed to know to improve?
Right.
Absolutely.
Right.
Yep.
Absolutely. Now, if you get like a ton of like angry complaints the same way. Yes. Yes. But no, you're exactly right. So actually those people, a lot of the times at least in some regard, in a professional sense, I do thank them. Right. I'm like, I really appreciate the feedback and, this and this, and, what can we do to, make this right or whatever. And that's why you do it in a way that's, very respectable. So you're not, in some of those circumstances, what we identify is there actually isn't a medical problem. It's all communication, or there's some kind of like soft skill that was lost or whatever. And like we have, like professional service, I just, give them 10%, give them 25%, whatever. And like people are super happy with that. But also I'm super happy because we really honestly received feedback from a constructive caregiver where they're like, this really just didn't go well. Right. And that's actually kind of what were our PAW clients for a period of time, is those people who were dedicated as PAW clients. They weren't wellness clients. Most of the PAW clients, like, Wendy Bauer, some of those, it's like, they were just these people who like are super cool and like, we're cool with them, they're cool with us. And they're like, but actually this thing isn't working anymore. Yeah. Cool. Thank you for letting me know. Yep. It's like, and then we do things, we write off the stuff at the end of the year and all that kind of stuff, just be like, cool, thanks. Right. But then the other side of the coin is like we talk about power. So it's like what can I do right then to like really just I'm going to sue you, and it's just like, do you have any idea if you can actually construct this in a way in which we can improve our process? We're actually more than willing to like shell out, money. Just,
right. But you're essentially buying growth.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
Yes. Yeah. It's someone you're extending the opportunity to collaborate.
Yeah.
So if we really want to embrace the idea of a caregiver and say the caregiver is part of our team to manage this patient, then we should also be extending the full extent of our accountability profile and creating accountability. Be like, cool, if you're cool, just let us know, let's collaborate, how can we make this better? I understand that money's going to grease the wheels, whatever, I don't care, like, cool, what's that feedback? But so that's a lot of those where it's just like, so you think at that time your only power you have is to shit post online, right? Like maybe your power at that time is like, how could I have served better? How could I have educated better? Like where did this conflict actually come from? Also BTW, you made a post on the PAW Facebook page about all of our positive Google reviews.
I did.
And I didn't want to shit on it, but I was going to make a post.
I was honestly waiting for
you to. Listen, I know you were. You could probably feel it through the internet. But like I was telling Katie, I'm like, I have to let it go. But I was going to make a post on there about be like, find one of those negative ones. Dude,
just post a negative one.
Yeah, post a negative one, because guess what? It's going to be that asshole Riolo. I'm like everyone has all these positives. Ben, can you sift through and find a negative Riolo one? Like we're 4.1 stars. Let me find those 0.9.
Right.
So like number one, it wouldn't be that hard. I just have to go back a few years.
No, for me,
because there was definitely an era of Real getting shit on.
Yeah, there was a whole period of time where I'm just like, online ratings are terrible. And then actually what I learned was online ratings.
That was one of your dumpy ideas, by the way. 5 stars for 5%.
Yeah, and
I didn't forget that one. Yeah, you want to hear about that idea? Carlo walks into a strategic planning meeting one day and he was like, "We're gonna pay people for 5-star reviews."
Yeah.
That's basically the summary of the idea. And I was like, "Hey, Carlo, that's a bad idea. You shouldn't do that." And then 3 to 5 months later, he finally let it go.
Wow. It's like, that was a bad idea.
Or did he?
Listen, I was fine with it. I'm still fine with it today. It's fine. No problem. Well, now we just pay Womply, and that's fine.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Which,
they give us good reviews.
Yeah,
well, sort of.
Yeah, sort
they
of.
just
doesn't matter.
Facilitate it.
Yeah. It's positive reviews. We're just fishing for them. There's a difference.
Right.
That was my idea.
Got to cast good bait.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
The negative ones to me too, like what we say, like people bashing and stuff, and we talked about before, like having your emotional response. Like caregivers are allowed to have that too, but there's still that extent of that emotional response should not be, "I'm going to sue you, you're terrible." Like that to me is just being selfish. Like if you really want to help the next person and you really think something could be better in our process, then go through that point of writing us and letting us know. Like that's why everything else is just trash. Like you can't do anything with it.
It is. And like, I think that's part of with me kind of coaching Janessa in that medical generalist role, because she handles a lot of the reactive case reviews currently, is like sometimes we'll get like 2-page written responses and like there's 90% of it is the emotional response.
Yeah.
And that's where it's like sometimes they just need to get it out. And at the end of it, it's kind of like, but what are they actually like asking for? Right. And like, you try not to pay out emotional response. And I mean, we that's where for me, like I die on principle. Like for me, and sometimes, so they write this really long review, and sometimes I'll just kick out a professional, refund back to them because I'm just like, yeah, it's fine. They're asking for $30. I don't care, but it's a very interesting process to go through that reactive review with a lot of caregivers because they try to throw their weight different ways. And this is all kind of stemming from kind of our pitch point of just saying like, if you were going to receive negative reviews, we would tell you if there was something to grow from it. And that's, I think, kind of where, and I'm only going to say it, I think it's great to have positive reviews, to post it on Facebook and remind everybody why we have those there. It's fine. It's fine. For me personally, and we've talked about this at PAWCast before, I don't go either way.
Yeah.
So for me, I don't seek validation, and I also don't receive criticism.
Yeah.
So for me, I know as long as I serve the patient, educate the caregiver to my standard, which my standard is very, very high for myself, I don't actually care whether I get negative or positive reviews. But I knew what Ben was doing, and I'm fine with it. I'm not opposed to it.
And I prefaced it.
I saw it. I read it in there. And it's not a problem. And that's why I didn't write anything. I
haven't done that in months.
I appreciated it, Ben.
And that's why I didn't say anything. And I was like, we don't need me shitting on this positivity. I'm like, that's not what we need right now. Like Carla just being an asshole about like some positive Facebook reviews. Don't care about what they say. Well, sometimes you actually kind of need it. Like it's okay.
Well,
it's warm fuzzies,
Right. It's not that you're not going to dictate your behavior.
Yeah.
As a veterinarian based on a positive or a negative review.
That's the point.
But sometimes it's really nice to be thanked.
Yeah.
That's true. Honestly, it hits a lot like more, I feel like, just when even caregivers at the end of like a consultation are like, thank you. I've actually gotten a lot like recently too, just people thanking us for being here.
Yeah.
Like
being
24 hours, like just being open and available.
It's the
like,
COVID stuff.
It is. Yeah.
Just
it's also the fact that we're here 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 365 days a year.
It's more that than the COVID thing.
Right. The COVID thing accelerated it a little bit.
The appreciation
for sure, because of, but not because of anything that we did. Besides just maintained. It's like, hey, like we got to make certain, restrictions and that sort of stuff. But overall, the fundamentals are the same. We're still here, serve the patient, educate the caregiver. Just because we have to do it over the phone doesn't change what's actually happening. Versus, oh, well, I can't get into my primary vet for 6 weeks. Right. Because they can only see 8 things a day.
Right.
Because of COVID protocols. They completely changed everything, and just the juxtaposition of those two things has created an acceleration in gratitude.
Yeah. And I still say that closing the lobby made us way faster.
Not on the CSS side, because the phone sucks.
CSS. Yes. We are open hire for CSS currently. So we are
Please come on.
massive hiring. I think we've had already 2, and we got another 5 working interviews.
Yeah.
So we just opened the floodgates on CSS. But yeah, so I guess that's kind of the other thing is now in kind of in a current to / post-COVID world. Yep. How about like validation of process? So can you, at least your perspective, because again, you kind of had varying experiences, also in university, but really honestly coming into practice, like right when COVID hit, I don't know that you're going to have a ton of like perspective in that capacity, but like either communicating with other classmates or online forums or whatever it is, like how do you think our process to sort of what has been existing in tradition or sort of on the corporate side as well, what's your perspective? I mean, obviously we're the best, but I guess can you attest to that? Like, the fact that we went curbside and like almost nobody noticed.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, yeah, because I mean, you guys already had it in place to
patient separation,
which is the biggest thing with COVID. Like,
that's why we were already set up for it,
which
is nice.
Yeah.
Well, let's actually we'll pause there and saying, what's your thoughts on patient separation?
I love it.
100% love it. Couldn't imagine. any other way.
Right. Especially for coming out of vet school.
Yes.
Being able to do a physical exam.
Yeah.
And then call over somebody else to be like, hey, look at this, or I'm going to go look this up in a book, and then I'm going to come back and relook at it, just to have that without the caregiver like looking at you being like, well, what did you find?
Yeah.
Right.
Trying to talk
you
to
have
They
that
want the
time.
magic. They want the
Right.
magic. They want you to put your James Elliott hands on these animals and tell you what's wrong with it.
Right.
And sometimes you can, but like especially coming out of school, you're like, it's the same thing, like good or bad, or like normal, abnormal. You're like, that doesn't look right, but like, you know,
and you got to make a phone call. You know, like I saw this thing, I got to call somebody about just what did I just see?
Yeah.
Here, let me text you a picture of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
You have that time to actually like learn and do it right. Like you're not making something off the spot because the caregiver is there, or like you're not missing something because you didn't take the time to like find a different answer.
So that's a different stage that we don't make you act on.
Right. Because going off of that, I actually recently had an encounter with a vet who's been out like just a year longer than me.
Sure.
And I don't even know how it came up, but she was like, she's like, I'll be in there because when it wasn't curbside, when she was doing exams in the room, you know, with the caregivers, and she didn't know something, she would like be like, kind of make something up to be like, I have to leave the room to then do something in the back to ask someone a question.
Ari Jukowitz actually at our graduation gave us like some things to say. I of course skipped it, but like a lot of our classmates, like, no, they talked about what he said. But which also Ari, I love that guy, but anyway, and Laura Howell, but anyway, but yes, you have to make these things up because you have to maintain this perspective of like, well, I'm the doctor and I know everything. I have to know everything. Yeah.
I would be so terrible at that. I'd be like, I really have to go to the bathroom right now.
Right.
Like, not in a good way.
Yeah.
No, it would just be such an extra stressor that we don't have to have.
You have 30 appointments per day. You're saying you have to go to the bathroom.
It would be a whole thing.
But it kind of goes back to like just being, I think, more efficient, because like you're examining them, you talk to the caregiver, and you're like, all right, well, now I have to leave talking to you to go do the thing to then come back and talk. So then it's like you can actually see another patient or something in the meantime, and you're continuing to keep moving. And
and I mean, honestly, so that was a heel I dug in first year out of veterinary school. So when I went into the first emergency practice, which was my first job, was working after hours. I've fortunately always worked in a clinic where I was stronger than the office manager. So like I never followed any policy. I followed my own, like I followed my own drumbeat essentially. Mm-hmm. So my first job is like, they were like, well, we examine patients in the room. I was like, I fucking don't. You know, I'm like, when I was in school, we had like other vet students or veterinary, well, at that time technicians, but veterinary nurses who would restrain for us. I'm like, who's going to restrain in the room? They're like, well, nobody. I'm like, well, I'm not fucking doing it. Like we're going to do everything in back. And it was an ER clinic. So we would have patients coming and going, and there'd be somebody in the lobby. I was first year out of vet school. I wasn't even a year out of vet school. I was out a couple of months, and they're like, well, they don't want to release their patient to be evaluated. I'm like, then they can go somewhere else. Right. Like that was it. Right. That was the option. Either you're bringing your patient in back for me to evaluate, where I have a certified technician, or I have trained medical staff who knows how to restrain, so I can be safe. Because if these hands get bit, my face gets bit.
Well, and the caregiver.
Correct.
Right.
Like
everyone involved.
Yeah, everybody.
Everyone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How about and I guess it would be a little bit, your experience would be in vet school because you never would have experienced it here. But how about like patient demeanor?
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, because I feel like we've talked about this too. Like we just have such a large influx of patients. Like are they all going to be sitting in the lobby with their dogs?
Yes.
Right. And then you have and the cats.
Yes.
Like, they're going to be, I don't know. Yeah. People definitely think their animal's going to be stressed without them. Quite frankly, I feel like they're going to be stressed no matter what.
Correct.
They're just in a different building. Things are going to smell no matter where they are.
Correct. Oh, you're talking about feline stuff. Yep.
Even dogs, like it's just a different environment, and you have all these other animals together. It's just loud and noisy. Like
when I came up here, that was that. We had patients in the lobby having seizures. Ooh. In front of caregivers in the freaking lobby.
Just riding it out.
You're riding it out. And it's like, we had patients dying in the lobby.
Yeah.
And it's like...
In that lobby.
That lobby,
right,
where everybody sees it,
right. There's no getting around
people. There's no way.
Yep.
And that's where, because when I had moved up here, because I was doing that in Michigan, I was patient separation. I came up here, we don't have patient separation, and then it was like 3 weeks, and I was like, I'm never doing that again. I was like, I don't give a shit how the other veterinarians run their shifts, but when I'm working here, it's patient separation because of that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. It's insane.
But I mean, I don't really see a change in their like stress levels.
Yeah.
So to speak. Like if they're going to be stressed out in the back, they're probably going to be stressed out in the lobby with the caregiver.
Yep.
And the in and outs of me and technicians either continuing to separate them. Like if we need to pull them back to then draw blood to then put them back with their caregiver. That's
the worst.
Then to go back to take x-rays, like that's a toll.
Yeah, because I've done work at Relief back, when I was just side cash or whatever, and that was like I would go into the practices and it would be like we're in the room, going back for x-rays, come back in the room, going back for blood work, come back in the room, going back for vaccines, come back in the room, and I'm like, guess what? It hates all of that.
Right.
Let's do it 5 times. Yeah. Can we do it once? Can we do it once?
Right.
Yeah.
And even too, the patient's like feeding off of the caregiver's emotions. Yeah. Like that's a huge part of it. Where the caregiver thinks the patient will be worse without them, but it's actually the opposite. Like they're feeding off of you. You're being stressed with them being here, but really when they're in the back, and maybe there's a little bit of fear into them, but sometimes that's good because it's more like fear. They're just gonna
stay there a second.
Stay. We do our stuff, and that's it. Like to me, that helps.
Well, and that's I think actually a really good point because like we actually are minimalists. I mean, like we actually only respond to what the patient requires. Like it's not like, and I think that's when we talk about, caregiver's perception of care, because it like super like rarely, like maybe like 3-4 a year of our thousands of cases, everyone's like, what were you doing back there? Like that doesn't happen all that often, but like generally speaking, we're in and we're out. Yeah. Like there's not like this prolonged process where, like, I mean, how many patients have we done conservative physical exams on, where it's just like, I'm not going to muscle down this cat just so I can listen to its heart and feel its belly.
Right.
I'm going to consult with the caregiver from a consent standpoint. And I'm going to be like, oh, hey, I don't want to stress your cat out more than I have to. We have IM sedation. Right. Otherwise, if you're not consenting to IM sedation, clinical medicine, I have these drugs I can send you with.
Yeah.
End of story. Why am I stressing this patient out more than I need to?
Right.
Rather than, and that's where, and I don't want to catch a lot of flack for it because I know there's, low restraint practices or, fear-free and so on and so forth, which again, to each their own. I mean, that's, as far as I'm concerned, that's kind of a niche market. But for what we do, because I mean, honestly, obviously I value your guys' opinion on a lot of stuff, but like really for what we do, if you look at kind of the fear-free stuff, like, I mean, how far off are we from?
Not very. Like, if it's too stressful, like you said, we're going to sedate.
Right.
Or, some are like, hey, less is more. Like, we read the patient. Less is more. Like, let's do that. What is for the safety of the patient or staff?
Yeah, if we got dog fight wounds and this dog's freaking out and I'm like,
you're like, well, I'm going to probably need to sedate anyway. So,
let's just do that and be done with it.
Yeah.
Well, and there's something to be said about the patient separation process that allows that to happen too, right? Because if you
neutral setting,
Well, if you have a patient that is fractious to the point that you have to do that, if you were to have to do that in front of a caregiver and you did a physical exam that took 8 seconds, like it's harder to justify that response to that person as they see you not work hard on their patient.
Correct. Right. Yeah, like, that's from Caroline's thing, the trade.
Yeah.
So that's what you're talking about, going to farms and stuff. You have to perform the trade to show your value. Right. And like, I mean, truthfully, how long are my physicals?
Not long.
Yeah, right. Right. Not long. And a lot of mine are directed towards presenting complaint because that's what a lot of our patients are. But like, there's also a lot of subtlety in what I've developed over the last 15 years. We talked about otoscopes. I mean, there's different ways I've trained my fingers and, there's different ways we perform physicals. But like you do that in front of the caregiver, it's like, well, we have to have like this thing and look inside of this thing and have this thing. And
I need a full physical exam.
Yeah. I'm used to my vet prying my dog's mouth open, and it's just like, well, yeah, but it's here for anal gland abscess. We're at the wrong end of the track. I don't need to check out its tonsils if I'm checking out its
tonsils.
Yeah. So.
Have you guys, I'm assuming that you have, but on a limited basis, but like had that experience of seeing a patient go from like a canine patient almost every time because cats are all in carriers or whatever.
Yeah.
But, they walk in the door and they're nutso, like they're just hopping all over the place, and then those doors close and they're just a completely different animal.
Yeah.
That's my favorite
sometimes
thing.
you just like let them sit in like a bay for like
a
5 minutes,
Yeah.
like a minute,
Yeah.
5 minutes,
Adjust.
like we're like okay, and
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
So
Oh,
that
yeah,
was
absolutely.
so working up front. That was like my favorite thing to do is explain to people how their lab, it's the nicest dog that walks in the door. He just wants to be jolly with everybody, but he doesn't want to leave mom. And then as soon as those doors close, he's like, "Oh, mom's gone. I'm just gonna walk with you now."
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's like they don't even know that you're there anymore.
Right.
And like I honestly would say that in a 12-hour shift at least 25 times.
Yeah.
It was like every time a dog would come in, because we'd just sit there and be like, all right, well, let's coax it to the door, and the doors close, and then we're fine.
Yep.
Right.
It's like you think, like, don't get me wrong, like I think when you were talking about the in and out, the in and out, the in and out, the stressful part in that is just the act of separating.
Oh, absolutely.
It's not the physical presence. It's just that's
absolutely.
the act of separating that sucks. So the limited number of times that you can do that, the better it is for the patient.
Yeah.
And so doing it once, although it is sometimes an arduous effort, there's literally only been 2 times in the almost now 2 years that I've worked here that we've ever had to be like, well, there's literally nothing we can do with this patient. And we've seen how many patients in the last 2 years?
Yeah. It's few and far
lot.
between. Yeah.
Yeah. It's pretty neat how it works. I honestly, like, because again, I have no background in education in this world. I would have never thought that.
Yeah.
Ever.
Yeah.
And boy, does it work.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's substantially different.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean that's so I mean patient separation and process and all those things that is PAW. I mean I'm glad we've been able to set the stage.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, and I feel like we've had this conversation too about like how like we've actually become somehow faster with COVID, like.
Yes.
Right.
Which,
which is insane to consider because everyone else has become less efficient.
Yep.
You know, and so actually part of one of my tasks here coming towards the end of the month is to kind of revamp all of our triage stuff, at least as far as clarity, not the process, but more of like how we train it and being clear and replicating it and so on and so forth. But like when we did, it was a diversification of practice. I don't know. We had done some stuff with Heska, and one of them was actually talking about
revenue diversification.
But it was about again triage and kind of the way in which we practice is that it's like we were probably one of the few practices that become faster. You know, I mean, for the referral businesses that are in and around our general district, which is still 150 miles. Is that, you know, when they were at 8 and 12 hour wait times, we were still under 3.
Did you guys ever hear we had one caregiver they were driving up this way from Indiana.
It was Milwaukee. Yeah.
Well, they were driving through Milwaukee and there's
Okay.
something going on with their dog. I don't even remember what it was. It wasn't great. But they called a clinic in Oak Creek, which is just north of Milwaukee. And they said, well, yeah, you can come in, but we have a 12-hour wait. And she was driving up to like Crandon or somewhere north of here. So she was like, well, I'm in northern Chicago and that sucks. So I'm going to call the next place. And then I think she called Appleton.
Yep.
And then they were at like 10.
Yeah, 8 to 10. Yeah.
And then she called us. I was like, yeah, we're at like 2.5. It's kind of long, but you know, and she's like, well, those other people are at least 12.
Wow.
I'm like, yeah, you could drive here and drive back there and get to your destination in a more efficient way. Yeah, that was probably late July.
Yeah, I was gonna say
it was just right in the guts of just going, just balls to the walls.
Yeah.
And that actually happened a bunch of times because we had one that I can recall. It was.
Well, we had a lot of actually clinics not in our referring district actually contact us to say, can we send emergencies your way? Because even if it's a 2-hour drive for our clientele, you're like, I mean, what is our average wait time? 3 hours,
Yeah.
4 hours.
Average?
Like,
Yeah.
for, like,
No
the
way. It's
most.
way less than
Well, I would say
that.
average is probably
I'd
less,
say
but
like
like the
2,
most
yeah,
we
1
get
to
to,
2.
like we might be getting up to like 5.
Yeah.
Right. I think
Yeah.
that's the most I've ever heard.
Yeah.
It's like 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I know the bear dog weekend that I didn't work. It was longer than that, but
Yeah.
that's always that one weekend. We
Yeah.
just know it's going to be awful.
Bear dog weekend.
But yeah, that was when Appleton started to transition out.
Yeah.
And we had calls from around the Appleton area from like 4 different clinics all in the same weekend of like, hey, can we send you guys stuff? Because they're sending us all to Green Bay, and Green Bay's not taking cases anymore.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then, like a week after that, right around the Minneapolis riots, Eau Claire and La Crosse, they both like shut the city down. So we were getting a bunch of clients from over that way. So we, at that point, you're talking about a 200+ mile circle
Yeah.
around the entire state.
Whenever I talk to some of the friends or family that I have in Michigan, it's like
Yeah.
having an ER in Lansing serving Detroit.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
where it's like, that's insane.
Right.
You know, being in Grand Rapids and like serving Traverse City. What? Like,
yeah.
that was our territory last year that you guys may or may not have known.
Makes a little sense.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Wow. Gosh, I
Yeah.
never want to hear people complaining about those wait times.
Yeah,
Then again,
right.
I'm not
Yeah.
hearing it.
Well, in that, but you can also use that as a resource, right?
Very
So like
true.
I've done that a bunch of times where I remember there was one. It was when we were at the old clinic. I think it was right around the beginning of the first summer I was over there, and we had a gal. She was when that veterinarian came down, and she was like, "I worked way too long the last 3 days to do this surgery on this patient," so she drove down from like some ridiculous amount of distance in the middle of the night to come to the clinic, and everything went fine.
I remember
Wow.
that. Yeah.
But the same night we had a gal that it was a Great Dane C-section, the one that got jammed up. I don't know if you that one I definitely remember because that lady she was difficult to communicate with. And same thing happening at the same time. And the cool part about the old building and the fact that waiting room was so small is like it compelled everybody to talk to each other.
Yeah.
And although C-sections, generally speaking, those caregivers, in my experience, walk in with a higher expectation of urgency than is I think is realized in the treatment area. And she walked out of her consultation kind of pissed off because like things had it was slower than what she was hoping for.
Yeah,
and
they want to come in and have a C-section as soon as they sign the paper.
Right.
Yeah.
And that gal comes in having driven 3.5 hours and she was like, "Oh, I get it now." I didn't have to say anything. It just completely humbled her. And that you had talked about that, or it was when we moved the CSS window out of that bay and into the closet. Essentially, the reason that happened was because now caregivers just have to talk to each other,
Right.
Because
Yeah,
I'm
that's
behind
smart.
this wall.
Yeah, that's actually part of how we designed the building. Is that I had told the architect I was like, I want you to force people to be in a small area with one another, and it's a very small. Well, I mean, obviously we have grand
It's
ceilings.
larger than it was,
Yeah,
but
it's
it's still
larger
pretty
than it
small.
was. I was like, but we want to have the small clinic feel. So that you have that sort of just like, shared experiences and people are allowed to talk and just understand what everyone's there for, and everyone's kind of there suffering for their own reason or what have you. But then I told them, I said, on the other side of the triage doors, I'm like, we got fucking work to do.
Yeah.
I was like, so keep everything in the front end small. And it was actually because of that, because it was like, the more you can get people talking, it's the reason why now with COVID you can't see that, but it's the reason why we send people out of rooms. Send them back to the lobby, send them back to the lobby,
right.
send them back to the lobby. Because
Right.
sitting in a room, it's way longer.
Yep.
But if you can at least have your conversation and have your shared experience with people in the lobby, the majority of the time, it works to our benefit to have them talk. Now, sometimes you'll have the crazies that they definitely derail that entire dynamic, and then you have where one person riles up the entire lobby.
That was
Right.
4th of July weekend.
Yes, I remember it happened at least once this summer where it was just like,
Yep.
yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah.
That was fun.
So, but
But again, so unnecessary conflict and inefficient process. COVID's made us faster.
Yeah.
You know, below that thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at this point, I think we can call this one good as the room's getting a little warm.
It's warm.
It's a little
warmer.
So,
all right. Well, that's a lot of good talk points. But honestly, I mean, concluding thoughts. You guys didn't call.
It's gonna end with that.
Yeah, yep. I mean that's pretty much the end of it.
Is that the full send?
That's the full send.
Oh,
yes,
boy.
that's the full send. So okay, all right, guys. Thanks for tuning in for another podcast. We'll catch you next week.